morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Soul Blueprint Workshop. I'm going to turn it over to Daryl. I know it's going to be a great day. I don't know about you all, but I'm energized and ready for this. So, okay, Daryl, thank you so much. We
Thank you.
Very much appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Okay, we're done. Go home. That's all we wanted to say today. All right, have fun, everyone. Always. I'll have my own conversations. Yeah, you're welcome. That'll be my first book, My Life as a Telephone. Yeah, Bashar once said that in that context that then he was using ET&T to call here. I think it was really a mistake teaching them our humor. All right, have fun. I'll say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right, thank you very much. Before we begin with new information, let us continue the transmission with regard to questions on clarifications of yesterday's material. You may proceed.
Yes, good morning, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Thank you. Yesterday you were talking about changing thoughts.
Yes, changing thoughts, changing feelings,
yeah.
changing beliefs.
Yes. And the foundational beliefs. I wonder if you have any suggestions as to techniques for doing that. It seems to be it's a very mental thing for me. And by the way, I love being around you because you make my brain sweat. However,
Oh, all right.
And today
Do you need to call a doctor?
I'm having a lot of heart opening
All
today,
right.
and my question.
So your heart is sweating too?
I hope not.
Why not? What is wrong with heart sweat?
Heart sweat is wonderful, but I don't think I want to work so hard to make it work.
Oh, all right. You don't have to work too hard.
Thank you. Okay, so the question is,
yes.
are there any specific techniques that would connect from the mind to the heart, to the feelings, to that inner knowingness, to make the changes in those deceptive foundational beliefs that are the untruth?
Yes, well, it all hinges on the facility that all of you possess that you call imagination. This is what your imagination is really brilliant at. That is making that connection, making that bridge. When you use your imagination, when you fully use it, it's not just a mental act. It is that which gets you in touch with what is in your heart of hearts. When you envision, when you imagine in that sense fully, when you picture, when you dream, when you allow yourself to unfold the image within you that is most representative of your excitement, of your joy, of the reality that you prefer, you will allow yourself to begin, as you create and crystallize that image fully, you will begin to feel your relationship to it. And as you feel your relationship to it, you will be blending the idea of your mind and your heart and your spirit, you follow me, and your body.
Yes, yes.
Imagination is the crucible in which all these other facilities and all these other vibrations can be melted together, blended together, and reformed into a new understanding of who and what you prefer to be as a person experiencing physical reality. Does this make some sense to you,
yes,
first of all?
It does. And
Would that be linked also to making a declaration, declaring and decreeing that my word is so?
Yes. And
And
again,
using my
yes,
imagination?
and again, the idea is to allow your imagination to be your guide, because your imagination is specifically keyed to coming up with methodologies and tools that are specifically, shall we say, aligned to your vibration. In other words, your imagination is designed to come up with what techniques will work best for you specifically. That's what your imagination is for. You understand?
Yes.
So, when you say, is there a specific technique? Well, yes, but there are many techniques. Each individual will have a tool or a technique that will work best for him or her. So, even though there are some fundamental principles as we have shared them with you, your own imagination is your best guide for taking those fundamental tools, those fundamental principles we've already shared, and putting them together in a kit, in an order, in a methodology that works specifically best for you. So you must rely both on the information that you discover through your own synchronicities, through us, through any other avenue, what have you, but you must then blend that, put all that information within your imagination, and allow your imagination to put them in the proper order and use them in the proper way that's best for you. In that sense, you are amplifying them in that way by using your imagination with them, by using them in your imagination. Does that make sense?
Yes, indeed.
Is that sufficient to answer your question, or is there some other specific way in which you wish to explore this concept before we go on?
No, that's fine. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Good day, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I would like a clarification on interactions that you have on a daily basis with people that, say, are negative, are depressing, are in some way not positive to be around.
Well, all right. Were you present when we delivered some of that information yesterday?
Yes, I was, and so that led to my question. What I usually do is just try to avoid these people. I don't find pleasure being around them,
All right.
and so I avoid them. But yesterday I got the impression that we might actually grow faster or
You can, yes.
if we are around them.
You can, yes, and that is a purpose that they can positively serve. The idea, of course, is in some senses twofold. Number one, as you say, not so much a matter of avoidance, but a recognition that if someone is of a vibrational frequency that simply isn't compatible with your preferential reality, then yes, you do not necessarily have to associate with those people. And that's all well and good. And then in that context, you're also giving them, by behavioral example, an opportunity to understand a consequence of their action. In other words, if they want to interact with you, they will also have to change their frequency for you to want to interact with them. If they choose not to, then there will be no interaction, and that will be seen as a consequence of the vibration that they are choosing and the vibration that you are choosing. So in that sense, you can recognize that you may not have compatibility, and you don't have to associate, but you don't have to look at it as avoidance per se, because the idea is that if you simply are of a certain frequency, it will probably be less likely that you will simply allow for an arrangement to occur where you will encounter them as often or even at all. However, on the other side of that coin, as you say in your language, if you then, with that understanding, still do encounter someone of that vibration, then yes, you have exactly and precisely understood that it can be used still, nevertheless, in a positive way to accelerate your own growth, to enhance your own growth, and also perhaps still yet as an opportunity or a possibility for them to learn something as well by seeing how you respond to them. You follow?
Okay, I understand that. Then they would see how I would respond. But
Yes.
what benefit am I getting around being people that are depressed and negative?
Well, you could help them perhaps alleviate their depression.
Only if they're receptive to it.
Of course. But again, it doesn't matter because it still can be used by you in a positive way. Use your imagination on this. And again, remember, simply and fundamentally, there is no mystery to the idea that you might keep running into people like this just because you're on Earth, and that's the way Earth is right
Well,
now.
It is, and
So it is not an issue of attempting to avoid that. In other words, ultimately there really is, at this moment in your evolution, no way to completely avoid that. Because you have made an agreement to recognize that there are still going to be a number of people going through their own processes, probably still exhibiting a lot of negativity, and so on and so forth. And you simply have to allow yourself to recognize that's the atmosphere in which you exist right now. And it will eventually change. But not right now. Right now, you are still capable of running into many different kinds of people with many different kinds of beliefs, many different kinds of attitudes, some of which are going to be highly incompatible with yours. But you have to trust the synchronicity of your life in that if they are there in your life, if they do come in to your life, then there is something there that will help either you, them, or both of you, if you are willing to look at it from that perspective. Because again, you see, if you really are of a vibration that you say is the vibration of your preferred reality, then it won't matter to you who it is that comes into your life or who it is you interact with, because the interaction for you will always be positive, beneficial, and constructive, and allow you perhaps to exercise more compassion. You follow?
yes, it seems like as I think that I'm getting to be more positive,
Yes.
I'm actually running into more negative people.
But you see, then that's a good sign. It means you can handle it. Don't you get it? Remember when we said the idea is that growth on your planet at this time is not an exclusion principle, it's an inclusion principle. And the more light you create in your life, the more you will become aware of the dark that also exists in your reality. Becoming aware, more aware of more of the dark, means you are containing and radiating more of the light. So it's a good sign.
Except there's more and more people I don't want to be around.
But you see, you're judging it. And in
Yes.
judging it, you are matching their frequency, and that's why it's uncomfortable for you.
Okay.
It's uncomfortable not because you are actually staying in your frequency, it's uncomfortable because you're not staying in your frequency of preference.
Okay.
That's then, for you, obviously, one of the main reasons why you're attracting them, to show yourself that it is actually very easy for you to succumb to their vibration instead of staying in the one you prefer. And therefore, this is actually a constructive lesson for you, that it's easy for you to give up the reality of your preference in light of what they are offering you instead. And you don't have to.
So I would know that I have made a change when I'm around these people and I recognize that they're being negative or they're depressing, and I
Yes.
just don't respond to it in any way.
You respond to it in a positive way, but it
I
doesn't
mean-
affect you in that sense.
It's correct, that it doesn't affect
In a
me
negative
any
way.
That's what I meant.
Negatively,
That it
yes.
doesn't affect
You
me.
can remain neutral with it if it does occur. I mean, you can also make your own statements in a loving way. You can make a statement to a person to say, your energy in that sense is not really compatible with the preference of how I wish to experience my reality. Now, I'm willing to assist you as far as it goes. But you also have to recognize that you have the opportunity to change your energy. And if you choose not to, I will love you nonetheless, because I allow you to choose whatever it is you believe is best for your reality. But I will have to simply let you know that a consequence of your choice might be that we may not interact any longer, because I prefer not to have that energy in my reality. So you give them a choice. And in that sense, you put it on equal footing. At the same time, again, if they do keep coming into your life, it's still your opportunity to recognize that you don't have to give up the vibration of your preference just because they happen to be there. Otherwise, they are still simply giving you a chance to recognize that it's easy for you to give up your preference.
Okay,
Does that help you?
yes. I also had a question about that you said that we're on the threshold of change and...
Well, of course, you're going through it rapidly.
But it seems like there's still a lot of violence and...
Yes.
And
Yes.
You read the paper and it doesn't
Yes.
seem like there's a big change, and...
All right,
Yeah,
once
I mean-
again, please pay attention. The closer you get to the light, the more darkness will appear.
Okay,
Did I not just say that a moment ago?
yes.
Well, then why would it be surprising to you that you will see more violence coming out? The idea, once again, is that as you close in on the threshold, you are giving yourself an opportunity to get all of the old stuff out of your system. But in order to get it out of your system, you have to get it out on the table in front of your face first. You have to see what's going on so that you can see that you can make a difference and make a change. But in order to make that change, you have to know what it is you are changing. And to know what it is you are changing, you have to see more of what it is you've been hiding under the table. So the closer you get to the light, the more capable you are of allowing the darkness that has been suppressed to come to the surface. So of course, there will appear to be at first more negativity, more violence. You're getting it all up out in the open so that you can really finally see what the choices are, dark and light, and allow yourself to choose the reality you really prefer. But that's a symptom of growth. It's a symptom of change, that everything will be there, not just one side. Everything has to be there before the change can really sink in.
It seems
Does
like-
that make sense to you?
Yes.
All right.
It seems
You
like
say that with some resignation.
Okay, here's a resignation.
Why isn't that
It
exciting
seems-
to you? Why are you not defining that as exciting, knowing that that's a symptom that you're getting closer to crossing that threshold, instead of looking at it as if somehow there's something wrong?
Because I hear what you're saying, and I believe it on a global basis, but on an everyday basis, when you talk to people you work with or people that you meet,
Yes.
and they're just struggling to get by, they're not
Yes.
even asking questions, much less looking for answers. So
So?
there's I don't see a lot of growth.
So,
I mean, outside
not
of-
everyone on your planet will change,
But the
you know.
majority are not.
Not everyone on your planet will change, and it may not even be the majority that will. That is not going to stop the idea of a transition. If in your mind you require a majority to go into the light in order for the entire world to change, perhaps you just don't understand the physics.
Perhaps.
The idea is this. Positive energy is integrative and geometrically powerful in that direction. Negative energy is segregative. And in that sense, it requires fewer people going in the positive to outweigh the amount of people staying in the negative.
Okay.
This is the idea behind the phrase that exists in your society of the 144,000. It means many other things as well. But the point is that if you actually have only 144,000 individuals vibrating above a certain frequency level on your planet in a positive energy format, those 144,000 will actually energetically outweigh the other several billion who may be still in negativity, because the several billion in negativity are not functioning cohesively,
Okay.
whereas the 144,000 are functioning geometrically cohesively. So in that sense, their energy completely outweighs the other billion individuals who are not functioning cohesively.
I see that.
Does that help you understand the process?
Yes.
Then take heart. All right?
Okay.
Remember that as you shift and as you change, bit by bit, day by day, literally into new realities every moment, ultimately, yes, you will only ultimately, not right now, ultimately see only those operating on the same level with you. But the population of the world may not be the same in that new reality. Do you understand? Does that help you?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I wanted to ask for some clarification about the power of illusion versus the illusion of power,
Oh, all right.
and how that applies.
One moment.
Okay.
This is something that was discussed for those of you who were not participating in the first part of the transmission yesterday. The idea that one of the strongest focal points that you can get to in life is to understand that it all comes down to discerning the difference between whether or not a person, yourself included, is operating under either the illusion of power or operating from the power of the illusion. Go ahead.
lies in the struggles that I'm facing.
Oh, all right, the struggles you
Well,
are facing.
I was trying to,
So in other words, you're already into the idea of the illusion of power,
right. And
just by defining them as struggles. But I understand what you mean. I don't want to take your pain away from you if you want to hold on to it.
okay, I think I've been.
I know how much your pain means to some of you. I know how dear it is to most of you. And I know it's an old friend you don't want to say goodbye to. So by all means, continue.
Well, I understand that, and I.
Yes, I know.
I'm
That's
looking
why
at
I'm
those
having some fun with
beliefs.
you.
Those beliefs that say that that's an old friend.
Yes.
But I look at the power of illusion.
Yes. The power of the illusion.
The illusion that we're disconnected.
Yes. If you understand it as an illusion, then you are empowered. If you think it's real, you are suffering under the illusion of power.
Now,
It's a real experience. The experience you're having is real, but the reality is an illusion.
okay, I get that.
Oh, all right. Then how would you like to apply what it is you are getting to what it is you are not getting?
I'm not getting I'm sort of thinking a lot about my daily life and what I feel about my daily life.
All right. What do you feel about your daily life?
Well, I feel like I think that I'm in the illusion of power, thinking that if I can control these certain elements in my
Yes.
daily life,
Yes.
that will give me power.
And what do you mean by control them?
Well, if I could just get to those things that are weighing on my mind,
Such as, for example,
just the daily things that.
just the daily
Cleaning
things,
out the
such
closet-
as,
cleaning out the closet.
yes.
Okay.
Well, where's the hesitation in doing that if it's something you actually want to do?
There's a lot of resistance
Because
I'm holding on to that struggle.
of how you're defining the idea of cleaning out your closet. How are you defining it that you would resist it?
As a chore and something taking away from time that I could. be
Yes.
doing
And
something
why are
else.
you defining it that way if it's something you say you want to do? Did I ask a good question? All right. Cleaning out your closet. Let me ask you another question. If the closet were cleaned out, how would you feel?
Better.
Well, then why don't you clean it out?
Because I'm used to not feeling good.
You're used to not feeling good.
I have this resistance.
So
that
you
I
like
have
not
to-
feeling good.
I don't. But
You
I have
don't?
these- Yeah.
Are you sure? You sound like you like it. You sound like you really enjoy not feeling good.
Yeah. I know.
Now, you have a sense, an inkling, as you say, that you could feel good and that it might feel good to feel good, but you're not sure that it would feel as good to feel good as it feels to not feel good.
That's exactly right.
Well, where does that belief come from? If you know that cleaning out the closet would feel really good, it would feel what? Freeing?
I would feel happier when I walk in my house.
You would feel happier when you walk in your house. Then here is another question for you. And this is a question for all of you. And it gets to the heart of some of the difficulties you have. Why is the act having been done not the same as the doing of the act? Why do you make a separation and a distinction and a difference between those two ideas? Why do you make it two ideas? The act of doing is the act done. The energy is the same. Another way of saying this is that the end is the means. The means are the end. There is no such thing as the idea of justifying the end and the means being different. Whatever the means are is the end. It's one and the same. The illusion of power that you're falling into is that these are two separate things. The cleaning of the closet and the closet already being cleaned, you are creating that to look like two separate things. It's the same thing. The act is the act done. The joy of having it be cleaned can be the joy of cleaning it, if you see no separation. We have done a little bit of an analogy with people from time to time to illustrate this point a little bit more strongly and help anchor it into your body consciousness a little bit more fully. Do you have a coin?
I think I can get one.
Will someone provide a coin?
Here, I've got one. Okay.
All right. Now, will you please do us a favor and put the coin down on the floor?
Okay.
Did you do that?
Yes.
All right. Are you standing up now?
Okay.
Is the coin on the floor?
Yep.
All right. Now, will you pick up the coin? Did you?
Yeah.
Was there an effort involved?
No.
Why not?
This is very simple.
Well, what's the difference then between that and what you're talking about? What's the difference? It is that simple. The doing of a thing that you want to do is immediately done when you associate with that thing the energy through the entire act. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should assume that your closet is full of coins and that picking them all up will make you very rich at the end.
Okay.
This is how you can use your imagination to use what does work for you in an area that doesn't seem to work for you. So turn your clutter into coins
Okay.
using your imagination and feel the same degree of richness, freedom, and abundance you would feel if you were in fact picking up dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of coins. You follow me? This is one way you can use your imagination in this way.
Oh, that's great.
Is this helping you
Very helpful.
to unlock this assumption that the doing of a thing is not the same thing as the thing done?
Yes, it does.
It is all one thing. It is all one thing. The reason that many of you create difficulty in this area of your lives is because you have been taught to be goal-oriented. The doing of the thing itself is the reason for the thing, not the end result. In fact, there actually never is an end result, ever. Because your life, in that sense, goes on. Your existence goes on. There is no end result, ever. Because you will never reach the end. Ever. Did I mention ever? So while you can certainly envision an idea, and while you can certainly manifest it in a process that seems to have steps that might ultimately result in a certain kind of a manifestation, stop looking at that as an end result or a goal. The only goal you have is to be yourself as fully as you can. It is the only goal all of you have. It's the same goal. You all have the same purpose, the same mission in life, to live your life as fully as you can. So define it in the way you prefer to, and live that way in the moment, every moment, because this moment is the only moment there is. Always. It's always now, isn't it? No matter when you look, it's always now, isn't it? It may be a different perspective of now, but it's always the same now, because there is only one now. Only one. And everything you consider to be a different moment is actually the same now looked at from a different perspective, a different point of view. That's all it is. So that's why they say, be here now. It's actually because that's the only place you can be. But when you pretend, by falling under the illusion of power, that you can actually be somewhere else, you focus on the idea of the future, the goal out there, someday to achieve. then you are not focused where you actually exist. And thus then you find that in paradoxically falling under the illusion of power, thinking you're controlling your reality by reaching out toward a goal in that way and detaching yourself from the present, you actually paradoxically give up all the power in the present you actually have. Because you're not in it anymore. Because the present is the only point of power there is. Because it's the only place you exist. So when you try to control by achieving a goal out there someday in the future, you leave all your power behind in the present, where it waits patiently for you to come back, so that you actually can be in control. This is the paradox of surrender. When you talk about the idea of surrendering, you're not actually giving up control, you're giving up the illusion of control and surrendering to the power you actually have, which allows your life to automatically and effortlessly work in every moment, because in every moment there is joy. Being in that moment, no matter what it is that needs doing in that moment, is filled with the same joy because it's being done in that moment, in that energy. And no separation is being made between the act doing and the act done. Is all of this helping you?
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Then thank you.
Thank you for the present.
You are welcome. Thank you for unwrapping your present.
Bashar,
Yes, good day.
good day. Could you add a little more about the power of the illusion? Because I think you've really clearly explained the illusion of power.
Well, it's what I just described. The idea is that the concept of surrender is the concept of recognizing that all you're actually giving up is the illusion of control. The idea is that when you understand it is an illusion, then there's nothing out there to manipulate. The idea of falling under the illusion of power is the idea that you have to control your outer reality to make things happen. The idea of falling back into the power of the illusion is in recognizing it is an illusion and there's nothing there to manipulate, you fall back into your true power, which is the cessation of trying to manipulate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you know it's an illusion, why would you manipulate it? It's like trying to take your shadow on the ground and stretch it into another shape instead of just moving your body to change the shape. You see, again, the analogy of the shadow, the analogy of the reflection in the mirror, is that the point of power is here with you. And not out there in the mirror, not over there in the shadow. If you want the shadow to change its shape, if you want the reflection to smile instead of frown, you don't go to the mirror and try to make the reflection smile. You don't go to the shadow and try to make it change its shape. You smile or you change your shape. The mirror reflection must then change. The shadow must then change. That's when you are understanding the power of the illusion instead of the illusion of power. Make sense?
So you basically redefine the situation so
Yes.
that you can smile.
Yes.
And then you're using the power of the illusion.
Yes. Because it all comes from you first. Nothing in the illusion can happen without it coming from you first. This is the third law of creation. What you put out is what you get back. But if you think that what's out there is how you change what's in here, then you're working it backwards. I'm not saying you cannot use the outer reality as an incentive to allow yourself to feel capable of making the change. But then you're using the reality as a proper tool. But if you assume that somehow the outer reality has control over whether or not you change, then you are falling into the illusion of power instead of using the power of the illusion. Using the power of the illusion means you can recognize reality as an illusion, but you can recognize it as an effective reflection. And you can train yourself by creating or changing, making changes in the outer reality that are reflective of what you know inside you truly are. And if you understand that it is simply a reflection, then it can be a powerful tool. But if you think the power is actually out there in that reality and that you can't change without it, then you're succumbing once again to the illusion instead of the power. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Does that help?
Yes, it does, very much.
Thank you. Are there any more clarifications before we move forward with information?
Yes, there are.
All right.
I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more or clarify a little more the subject of the oversoul. We were talking about that just before we ended yesterday.
Yes.
And the question I wanted to ask was, is there an ultimate mission or trajectory of an oversoul, a process with a goal or a
The oversoul is not exactly goal-oriented.
well,
It's
okay.
experientially oriented.
Yes, but is there again a sense of purpose, as we might define purpose, to the experience? In other words, what I'm wondering.
Well, loosely, perhaps you could define it as purpose, maybe.
Well, what I was thinking of, more specifically, was when we have the appearance of a great teacher or
Yes.
an avatar, such as Christ or Buddha or
Yes.
someone like that.
Yes.
Does this represent a process of integration
Yes.
of an oversoul, where the various parts of it
Yes.
have really flourished and expressed as much divinity
Yes.
as individually possible within those
Yes.
parts, so that
Yes.
they then are
Yes.
absorbed
Yes.
into one?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And the idea of what you typically on your planet refer to as Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, Krishna spirit, is actually the oversoul of oversouls. In other words, it's the oversoul of the collection of oversouls that make up all the individuals on your planet. It's the oversoul of Earth itself and all the consciousness associated with it. That's the level you're talking about when you refer to that level. It's an oversoul of oversouls. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very, very much so. Another question I had, kind of on the same topic, was I have assumed, in a sense, that part of the deal.
The deal.
The deal, yeah. I mean, I look at it in terms of a deal.
Oh, all
between,
right.
Say the creator.
Did you read the fine print?
Well, yeah, this is important.
Yes.
The deal
Yes.
between the creator consciousness that manifests worlds and universes and individuals,
Yes.
people,
Yes.
and the individuals that are experiencing this process,
Yes.
is that every so often this kind of manifestation will occur to remind us
Yes.
of what we're ultimately capable of, that it is part of the process of physical manifestation of
All
worlds.
right. Well,
Is
that's
that
one
true?
way to look at it, but you have to understand that the way you have phrased it is quite symbolic and not necessarily interpretable on other levels in the same way. It's not so much a deal as it is simply a natural result of the nature of all that is.
Well, the periodic visitation, as it were. of
Well,
such
let me put it to you
individuals to
another
serve as
way.
a reminder.
Well, yes and no. Let me put it to you another way. All that is aware of the fact that such manifestations can serve as a reminder, is completely aware of the ability of that manifestation to function that way, and obviously then there is reason for such a manifestation to exist within all that is that serves that purpose. But from the viewpoint of all that is, it is more like unto the understanding that it is a natural result of the way in which all that is sees itself. It's more like the idea of the deal that all that is has with itself, to be itself in all the ways that it can. So in being itself in all the ways it imagines that it can, then that's one of the ways that are possible within all that is to be. Therefore, it must be one of the things that happens. It's not like it made a specific deal to make sure that would happen at specific times or anything of that nature. It simply is one of the ways all that is can be, and so it is.
Well, there's a passage in the Bhagavad Gita where
Yes.
Krishna is saying to Arjuna that any time that the balance of light and darkness, or positivity and negativity in
Yes.
the world, good and evil, when that balance threatens to be overthrown by the darkness,
Yes.
that is the moment in which this kind of
I see.
a manifestation.
What you are referring to simply is that the existence of all that is has a built-in self-regulating mechanism, and this is true. In other words, the way we have often phrased it is, in actual fact, if you wish to look at the totality of creation, it's actually slightly biased toward the positive. And what I mean by this is this. There is what you classically understand to be the positive side, the negative side. But then there is also a point in the center that is neutral, yes?
Right.
Well, the idea of finding yourself in a neutral place still gives you the opportunity to choose which side you wish to go to, which way you want to go. And therefore, even the idea of neutrality is itself slightly positive. So you could actually say that in essence, the universe is actually 51% positive and 49% negative. Therefore, the self-regulating mechanism is that it will always, in a sense, churn itself directionally back toward the positive in whatever manifestations need to occur to represent that current that exists within the matrix of existence itself. Does that make sense?
Yes, but how does this fit into the concept of the yugas? You know, those periods that we look at historically, where there is
It's simply a physiological translation of the idea that there are cyclic currents within existence that often represent themselves over and over again in a variety of ways. But that's simply the nature of all that is. That is the nature of all that is expressing itself in whatever dimensional domain it can express itself in whatever way is relevant to that dimensional domain. In other domains, it expresses itself quite differently other than in what you recognize as periodicity. Periodicity is simply the way that is translating that particular essence or nature of all that is into a space-time framework. Does that make sense?
yes.
Does that
Thank
help?
you. Very much, thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifications required?
Hello.
And to you, good day.
Well, I really just wanted to share a bit of humorous synchronicity, if you will.
Oh, all right. Is it relevant to what we have been discussing?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Yesterday, you may recall, when I sat down, I addressed you as Bazaar
Yes.
instead of Bashar.
Yes.
And last night, when I was back in my room flipping through the TV channels, I came across an episode of Cops, something I don't normally watch.
Cops.
Yes.
All right.
And so as they were going to commercial, this particular one said, the title said, Cops, Bizarre Calls.
Yes.
So
So you had a very
struck me.
bizarre day
I had
yesterday.
a very bizarre day, very much.
All
And,
right.
I'm having a fabulous time, and I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you very much
Well, thank you.
for all of this fabulous information that is...
Thank you for generating your own synchronicities as well.
Thank you, Bashar. I got it right that time.
And you got it left.
One more.
All right.
Hey, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Good day. Yesterday, we were talking about beliefs and emotions, and,
Yes.
and then a separate subject of motivation.
Yes.
And on the way here this morning, and actually also yesterday morning, as I was driving to get here, and April was expecting me, and I was running late, and the faster I'd try to go, the later I would get, and I was getting angry.
So the more you ran, the more you stayed in the same place.
But not only that,
All
yes,
right.
not only that, the anger that came up because I was trying so hard and I didn't want
Yes.
to disappoint her. and
Yes.
The anger that came up was compelling me in a sense. The anger was in control.
Yes.
And I was cussing at drivers.
Oh,
and
all right. How exciting.
Okay, all this stuff. So maybe for you, but not for them. So on the
Well,
way
you don't know that for a fact, but go on.
Well, yeah, you're right. But this morning it was very interesting because after taking that information in from yesterday,
Yes.
I went, okay, where did I choose?
Oh,
to
you mean you
operate?
paused?
I did.
Oh, thank you.
I paused. Thank you, and thank you for reminding me that I paused.
Yes.
I paused and I went, okay, where did I choose to operate in this manner?
All
Where
right.
did I choose to go in
Yes.
this anger? And I asked myself the question, and then maybe 5 minutes later, what came up was that when I was in the womb, I had a twin, and the twin died, and it was
All
an
right.
extremely traumatic experience that I've done a lot of work with a lot of layers there.
All right.
And what I got in touch with was my choice as she was dying, and I was sure that I was going to go with her,
All right.
that I decided and made a strong, strong choice, and I hope I don't cry here because
You can cry if you wish.
I made a strong choice to get really, really to call forth all the anger that I could in myself, to stay alive.
All right.
And there was this thought in myself, if I can feel the anger, I'm still alive.
All
and
right.
therefore, from moment to moment, I can, in a sense, push myself forward and be alive.
Very creative.
Yeah, it was creative, except
Except
I mean,
now
it
you're
worked.
getting tired of it.
Exactly. So
Because I
went,
think by now you've probably caught on to the fact that you're alive.
yeah, I'm continuing. But here's the question: as she and me made that decision,
Yes.
and is directly motivated, is directly around the motivation for moving forward in life as well. And 'cause
Yes.
I've noticed the pattern
Yes.
very deeply ingrained in myself.
All right. Very good.
And so as I realized that, I went, God, that's where my determination is so strong in life, is from her in
right.
that choice. And I thanked her
For propelling you
for
forward
propelling
in
me
life.
and for in a sense, who knows, maybe she saved my life.
You were both a classic example of a physics experiment. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for her, going back into spirit, it pushed you that much harder forward into physical reality.
Interesting. Interesting.
Two eternally connected particles spinning off in two directions, always connected no matter how far apart, because space and time are an illusion. So you are exhibiting the idea of quantum connectedness with your twin.
Oh wow, that clears up a lot on that. Ooh, now here's the fun. Here's the question.
Yes.
That was a very strong decision with a lot of power behind it on her part.
Yes.
And it
In
has
essence, she actually kicked you into physical reality.
my prenatal self. You're saying? Right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So and I explained to her on the drive here that determination is very powerful and very wonderful and does not have to be motivated by anger. That here's
Excuse
an
me.
opportunity.
I don't mean to interrupt you, and I know it doesn't show in the channel's body, but I and several others are laughing very strongly right now. Because you said you explained it to her. In actual fact, she explained it to you. But it came through your mouth as a reflection of the fact that you realized it was being explained to you, and so you explained it back. So she could make sure you got it.
Oh, so she's like being that reflection until I get it, right?
Yes.
She's being that as the service, not as a dummy.
Yes.
God, who's the dummy here? It's really
And who's the ventriloquist?
This is great. This is great. Right. Where's Jenny? We used to have these monkeys that hung around your neck, and we thought that we were the ventriloquists, but they were really powerful beings. These monkeys.
Yes.
Okay, here's the question about shifting this energy now.
Oh, I want to tell you a secret now.
Okay.
You refer to the idea of these monkey puppets that you've hung around your neck,
Yes.
and using your imagination that they are actually living beings capable of talking. And here is the classic secret of the idea of ventriloquism and a ventriloquist's dummy. In many cases, obviously, those things are actually devices and tools that allow your higher self to say things that you as a person in your reality would never dare to say.
Right.
But they actually are saying things that often are really coming from not only your higher self, but your guides,
Yeah.
other spirit friends,
Yes.
and so forth.
And they had this cute little face, and people would just light up like a
Yes,
Christmas tree.
because it comes in a format they can accept, because in your terminology, it's non-threatening and they can trust it.
Yes. It was
Because
a
it doesn't have an agenda.
Right. Just sharing love.
Yes.
Just sharing love. Which brings me to the question of now this energy that has been deeply patterned, and now I'm seeing it, understanding it, and going, okay,
And now you
motivation-
understand that if you're seeing the pattern, you don't have it anymore?
I understand that you said that yesterday. I haven't fully.
All right.
I
Well,
haven't
let that
fully
be a
understood.
beginning.
Yes, yes.
Do you understand the principle? It's
understand.
similar to the idea of the forest for the trees saying that you have on your planet. For you to actually see the forest, you have to be standing outside of it.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't see it as a forest. You only see the trees. If you see it as a pattern, you don't have it anymore. You have to be beyond the pattern to recognize it as a pattern.
Okay, but here's the rub.
Oh, the rub. All right.
I've seen it as a pattern for quite some time, but
Yes.
I had not gotten down to this moment in time
Yes.
where I saw that I could deal with it in this part of that
Yes.
in a different way.
Yes.
And
All
we're
right.
talking about motivation.
Yes.
The motivation is my real question, because
Yes.
that's even, in a sense, more important, is changing the motivation rather
Yes.
from anger motivated.
Yes.
Which I'm this wonderful spirit, but don't cross me because I'm going to get violently angry if you get in my way.
Ooh. Ooh, you are so scary.
And it's been a pattern that I've struggled with for a long, long time. So it's very
That's because
important
you
to
believe
me.
it serves you. When you understand that's the motivation for hanging on to it, and you realize that you don't need that to serve you, but that something else can serve you even more strongly, you will change the motivation automatically and let the old idea go. The motivation,
says it.
the motivation is not the anger. The motivation is what you believe the anger is doing for you.
Helping me survive.
Yes. Now that you've got a handle on surviving, you don't need the anger in that sense to allow you to continue to survive. You're beginning to recognize that you need to feed yourself something more nourishing
Absolutely.
in order to survive. And now you're starting to recognize what that nourishment is, and that it's love and not anger.
Right.
The anger in that sense is your justification for being, and you needed that to justify the idea of maintaining your existence in physical reality. But now, as you say, it's old hat.
Yes.
So now you're recognizing that you're wearing that out and that your motivation needs to be recalibrated. And the motivation then needs to be attached to the idea that something else actually sustains you more fully.
Yes.
And that is the idea of love.
Yes.
Self-love, expressions of love, however you wish to phrase it. Creativity, excitement, joy.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you are making that shift.
Okay. So then just by then you're saying to more and more change that.
By the way, it is no accident that you had this revelation while driving your car, because it's a sign that you need to shift gears.
Right. And the vehicle of my
Yes.
moving forward. And
Very
moving
good.
on. It's
And that if
absolutely-
you do shift gears and understand that you're in a different vehicle, then you will be on a freer way to move. And there will be no traffic in that sense.
Thank you very much.
No jam. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Maybe jelly, but no jam.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now then, let us move forward with the discussion and a deeper explanation of the oversoul idea and the soul blueprint idea, as was brought up yesterday of your time, with regard to familial relations and how that keys into your soul blueprint pattern, you can look at the chart that was created that has the all that is, oversoul, and individual soul, and the 4 quadrants of ideas and themes that make up the concept of your soul blueprint pattern. Now, of course, yesterday we talked about the idea of the pie chart and how all of the different energies that you have brought with you on your journey from different systems, different lives, and so forth, create this pie chart that has different degrees of different vibrations making it up, even though you all contain the same basic energies. It's in different proportions according to what you are connecting to, what you're focusing on, what serves you best in this particular lifetime. But now, you can also see that what you're bringing to bear, more specifically within all this, are things that have to do with familial, family, soul group relationships, ideas of so-called agreements that you may be making, in some senses such as we actually just examined, because the idea of the twin, where one dies and one lives, is a perfect representation of a soul agreement within a soul family. The idea being that I will ensure that you will be firmly anchored in this physical reality in the way that will serve you best for the theme that you're going to explore by kicking you into this reality, by moving out of it myself and giving you all the momentum. That's a soul agreement between a soul family group member and another. Many different kinds of agreements are made in this way to be of service and assistance to one another, to provide for the other what the other may need to experience in that life, what it is they need to experience, so that they can best serve out their theme of choice. It is done many different ways, but this is definitely one of the things that is included in the overall patterns, so to speak, of your soul blueprint, are these soul family agreements. And they are very personal in that sense, in that you have true familiarity with many of these other souls, individual souls, and have had many different kinds of life experiences, speaking linearly, and have played many different parts, different literal family members sometimes being each other's spouses, sometimes being children, brothers, sisters, friends, other relations, mentors, students. You have all, at this point, done it all in that context on earth. You've all played all the roles, and now you're playing the role where all the roles come together and are integrated in a manner that allows you to be of best assistance in serving the theme of being on earth in its primary transition phase, from one level of reality to another. From 3rd density to 4th density transition. That's the general theme you're all playing out, even though obviously you have your own individual themes as part and parcel of helping in the overall transitional theme. Because each and every one of you that becomes more aware of your soul family group agreements, the themes you have chosen to experience in this life, and the more aware you become of how to allow yourself to express those things fully through following your joy and being the fullest self you possibly can be, it adds to the overall momentum and the overall energy of Earth's capability to transition in a positive and harmonious way for those that will ride that wave. So, also you can see in that chart the idea of what might be referred to as random acts. Now, this does not mean accidents. There is no such thing as an accident. But it does mean random act in the sense that you have freedom to choose. There are many probabilities that you could choose from in order to decide how to experience your theme at any given moment. And we have used the analogy of walking down a hallway to describe or illustrate the concept of living out a theme. In other words, You may decide that a certain hallway is what you will walk down in life, and that may not change and may seem in some senses like destiny, but it's very loosely described as a theme. But how you walk down that hallway is up to your free will, your freedom to choose. The idea of random probabilities that you could attract to yourself to express the idea of your theme in a number of different kinds of situations and conditions and interactions and relationships. So random acts still plays a very big part in the idea of how you play out your soul blueprint. You leave yourself open, in other words, for the possibility of doing it in any number of different ways. And that allows there to be the variety that is the spice of life, as you say. The acknowledgement of true uniqueness and difference in all of you, in living out your similar themes in a variety, such a variety of different ways that it adds to the complexity and richness of all that is in terms of all the ways it can experience itself going through even one particular kind of transitional theme. So random acts are very important to allow there to be seemingly an open-endedness to the ability in how it is you experience the idea of your soul blueprint. Again, it isn't accidental. No more so than the idea of what you call, let's say, gambling on your planet. If you spin a wheel and are looking to place money on a certain number, you understand that the way that the numbers come up may be random, but it's no accident that the wheel is spinning because you spun it. So that's a way to look at the idea of randomness and understand that it has nothing to do with the concept of accident, in the sense that these two things really have no connection or have nothing to do with each other. There is no such thing. It's all an orchestration, but the orchestration may be hidden, so that you can experience in the act of creation the true moment of creation and the randomness of it, the savoring of the randomness of that true moment of creation. The mechanism of creation itself is brought about by the very concept of randomness. And so you include that also in your soul blueprint, that you can express yourself in any number of ways and still accomplish the same thing. Now, in the family groups and in all the other things that are on that chart, again, it really just has to do with understanding that when you choose to experience physical reality, you do sort of crystallize yourself into a personality construct, and that personality construct acts as a translation device through which the amalgamation of all of this soul blueprint energy and energy from the source is expressed. And in expressing it through that prism of the personality, the three-sided personality of definitions and emotions and behavior, in expressing itself through that, it determines exactly what kind of a spectrum in life that you see, what kind of an experience that you have. And this takes us back to the reality generation circuit. So, again, these charts are designed, all of them are designed, as actual meditational tools so that you can focus your consciousness, focus your imagination on the configuration that is outlined in these charts. Not that it needs to be infinitely explained in every detail, but that you yourself, using your imagination when you focus on them, when you read them, when you look at their layout, when you look at their configuration, when you look at what the symbols might mean to you in terms of the meaning you have given them, they can, in a sense, be reflections to you, mirrors to you, that will put you in touch with these different aspects of your consciousness, both on the physical personality level and on the soul blueprint level and on the oversoul level and on your connection to source or whatever level you wish to look at it from. These charts, in a sense, are, shall we say, like unto mandalas in a way. They are like unto spells in a way. They are like unto arrangements or patterns or matrices of energy in a way that represent an interface between different levels of you as a person on Earth and different levels on which you exist in other realms as well, other dimensions, physical and non-physical. So use them in that way. And let your imagination be your guide. This is why they have been created for you as a tool, why they have been designed for you as a tool. Anytime you find yourself feeling a little bit lost, feeling a little bit off your so-called path, use these tools. They're very strong tools. And when you allow yourself to experience them, from that moment of pause, from that moment of neutrality, in that state of being, they will be very strong and effective tools to illuminate in your imagination certain aspects that you need to look at that will be the things you need to process, the things you need to integrate to move even farther forward on your journey of self-integration, of soul growth. Does this make sense to you? All right. Now, one moment. Take a deep breath and let it out. And take another deep breath and let it out. And take another deep breath and let it out. So also then understand that oxygenation of the system is also key. And when you are in that meditative state, the deep rhythmic breathing that is often referred to as yogic breathing is also another way to energize and amplify the vibrational energy within yourself, to be more sensitized, to be more attuned to these charts, so that when you contemplate them in that state, with the meditational, relaxed, neutral state, with the deep oxygenation of the system, that in that state you will actually glean more from those charts. Your imagination will open up to more information from those mirrors, from those reflections, from those tools. Anything you can do to balance out your body consciousness, clarify, detoxify your body consciousness, will allow you to become more highly attuned and more highly receptive to any information that these tools can help inspire within your imagination. So it is very important, along with any tools that we share with you, that you allow yourself to become the best receiver you possibly can, because it's all about ability to absorb and integrate this information, not just listen to it and let it spin in orbit around your head. Not just allow yourself to be inundated with information, but to truly absorb it. And absorption on all levels is based on the ability to remove toxins, whether they be literal physical toxins or pollutants in your body, or whether they be the idea of toxic beliefs that don't allow you to believe in something you say you prefer to believe in. So the more you can clarify what your beliefs and definitions are, what your motivations are, and the more you can actually detoxify your bodies and your cellular structures, putting into them the oxygen, putting into them the water, putting into them the proper nutrients in a natural way, the more you become highly receptive to all these levels of information that are surrounding you constantly, information constantly coming to you from us, from your guides, from other spirits, from other dimensions, from cross currents in other lives, other experiences you are having right now. Make yourselves more highly receptive by clarifying yourself as best as you can. On all levels. On all levels. That would be our strongest suggestion for the most efficacious use of the information we are downloading in this transmission. Because understand that there is much, much more information coming to you all than just what you are hearing coming out of the body sitting in front of you. There is energy patterns, all sorts of things coming to you. Sometimes you recognize this by suddenly finding an increase in synchronicity in your daily lives, because you are using the information in a way that you are not really immediately consciously aware of. Sometimes it will be that your dreams will become far more lucid and far more vivid. Sometimes it will simply be that you find yourself more capable of taking that pause and reflecting on exactly what is going on and what you are doing, and be more transparently aware of yourself. It may manifest in any number of ways, all this extra information that you may not at this point be consciously aware of, but it's there Nevertheless, and you can become far more attuned to it with all the clarifying ideas we have just mentioned, both in terms of energy and psychology and emotionality and beliefs and motivation, but also in terms of body as well. Because remember, there really is no difference. And the idea really is not that your spirit is in your body is in your spirit in that sense. It's contained within it, supported by it. It's within the soul, within the oversoul. And the idea of leaving your body is not so much leaving your body as it is simply expanding your consciousness beyond that focus. So the body in that sense is really like unto a tube, a spyglass that you are looking through to experience the idea called physical reality. But when you back up in that sense, when you remove your eye from the eyepiece, you recognize that you're holding that telescope in your hand and that there is still a bigger reality in which the telescope exists. And that what you thought was the only reality that you saw through the eyeglass is now just a piece of a bigger reality that you are also contained within. And then when you drop that looking glass, you will recognize that you are also in a bigger reality, and another reality, and another reality. And as we have said several times, the whole idea of evolution, the whole idea really of spiritual growth, fundamentally, from the perspective that you are coming from, is really the process of actually awakening to the fact that you are the reality you previously thought you existed in. You actually are physical reality. You don't really exist in it. You actually are it. It's an experience in your consciousness. That's all it is. It isn't empirically real. It isn't empirically solid. And even the experience of physical reality itself contains clues that lets you know how ephemeral it is. Your own scientists, your own quantum physicists know how unsolid solid reality is. And they even balk at calling atoms solid particles, because in reality, they're not. They're just ideas. Wave forms, they may say, but waveform is really just an idea. But your reality is made up of ideas. The ideas you have of yourselves, the ideas you have of others, the ideas you have of reality. It's just ideas. That's all it is. But what a fantastic idea it has been. And now it's going to be a different idea. Just as fantastic, but different. And that's what you're creating now, really, is a new idea of yourself, and therefore a new idea of what reality experience is all about. Does that make sense to you all? What is the time frame remaining for this part of the transmission? All right. Within this remaining time frame for this segment, are there now more questions or discussions with regard to the new diagram, any aspect of it, and anything we have said that requires clarification or further discussion? All right. Then abide by whatever procedure you have agreed to.
Good morning, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Very frustrating issue going on.
A very frustrating issue. All right. Speak up and be bold so that all may hear what you have to share.
I felt driven since the age of 12.
Oh, more driving. All right.
Surrendered 11 years ago.
Yes.
Surrender almost daily
Yes.
through meditation.
Yes.
However, it feels so frustrating because every time I feel closer to the source,
Yes.
it moves further away.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely.
Every-
How else are you going to grow?
That's what I'm coming to. Every time I feel I've learned something,
Yes.
I immediately recognize that I've got so much more to learn.
Yes.
The more knowingness I have,
Yes.
the more I feel ignorant.
Yes.
And it is exactly, as an analogy, a magnet game.
Yes.
the satisfaction of knowingness, the satisfaction of enlightenment
Yes.
lasts for such a small moment. And to be honest with you, Bashar, I'm very jealous.
Oh, all
I
right.
want to have the answers you have.
But
I
you
want-
do.
I want the
You
knowingness.
do.
I want the knowingness. I want
You
to
do.
live in knowingness
You
every
do.
moment. I don't.
Nothing is stopping you but your idea about yourself. And the way you think you're going about it or you think you need to go about it. Nothing is stopping you from having the same access to all the same information, the same degree of ideas of knowingness. But I want to let you in on a very little secret. All the knowingness that you ascribe to us, from our point of view, is barely anything. Most of our knowingness comes from the fact that we know we don't know so very much more.
Exactly.
Therefore, in the idea that you've already described, you have in fact achieved the same kind of knowingness that we have.
But what is the point of playing a game if no one wins? You said earlier on.
What is the point of playing the game if no one wins?
Yes.
Why is it not winning enough to just play the game? Why isn't that a win that you are even allowed to play the game? That you even exist to be able to have the experience? Why isn't that enough of a win? Why haven't you already won, in other words?
I want to feel winning to the point where the light does not keep moving further and further away.
But that will never, never happen.
Why?
Because it's infinite. How can you have an end to it when it's infinite? There is no end to the game. If you actually want the game to end, the way you experience the idea of the possibility that there's an end to the game is by doing exactly what you have done. In other words, you've chosen to be a part of a physical reality where you could actually forget that the game is infinite. And thus you have made it seem as if the game could possibly have an end. But now, in playing that game, you have reversed the idea and allowed yourself to begin to remember that the game actually doesn't end. And so the only way for you to once again feel that it could end, that there might be an ending that you would arrive at, thus having won, is to once again forget that there's no such thing as an end. But you don't want to forget that now. You have got yourself completely in the center of the game of paradox. Which game do you really want to play? The one that goes on forever and is always eternally delightful and full of surprises without end? Or the one where you have forgotten and are in the darkness again playing that game? Which do you prefer?
The first, of course.
Well then,
But it leads me to the next
yes.
challenge.
Which is?
In context of what you just explained,
Yes.
I can never really assert who I am.
Why not?
Because I'm always changing.
Yes, that's who you are. The idea of who you are is just becoming bigger, that's all. It's no longer defined in the limited way it used to be. And that's why you're uncertain of exactly right now who you are. But you'll get it. You'll understand that you're bigger. And that the idea that you're always changing is, in fact, who you are. You are change itself. It's one of the laws of existence. You see, the whole idea, if you wish me to put it in euphemistic terms of something that is, quote unquote, achievable as a win, is the recognition that ultimately what you actually are is all that is. Now, the paradox is that when you fully realize you are all that is, it will simultaneously feel like you are moving at infinite speed forever and standing perfectly still. So in that sense, you can find that there is the possibility of creating what you would call a sense of accomplishment, but that doesn't actually mean that anything is really ended. because there's always something beyond that. Your curiosity will never die. And even if you create for yourself the experience of having won the game, arrived at the end, caught up to the light, you will then, at that moment of triumph, want something more, and there it will be. Because you are all that is, and what you say goes. So it's just a matter of what level of it you want to be aware of for whatever game is more exciting for you to play. For a while, it was exciting to think you could actually catch up to the light and be a winner. Now you're in that transitional stage where you understand that what you really want to do is understand you're already a winner just because you're playing a game that goes on forever. And oh, how exciting that is, because the fun will never end. So you're just right now kind of caught between the two ideas. And the fact that you now perceive that everything always changes is exactly the biggest clue that you need to understand who you actually are. You are change itself. All of you, all of us, we are change itself. Because that's the act of creation. And if you want to catch up to the light, recognize that you are the light. And it's always with you. That's when you catch up to it. But simultaneously will recognize you can also chase it forever. Remember, in this day and age on your planet, in this process you're going through, the realization that you're ultimately really having is it's no longer this or that, it's this and that. Both are true. What appear to be absolute opposites are both true as anything. That all ideas are true, all perspectives are true, all reality experiences are true because they're all a part of all that is. Experience it however you wish. Does that make sense to you?
It does, thank you.
Is this helping at all?
Very much. Small question.
Small question, all right.
Do animals know this better than we do?
They don't allow themselves to get so much in their way, yes. They instinctively understand this a little bit more clearly than most humans do.
Thank you.
Does that help you?
Very much, thank you.
One moment. One moment. Don't go anywhere. What animal do you identify with most strongly if you do?
Dogs.
Why?
They understand us. They have a capacity to love unconditionally.
I see. And
They're
you
very
think that that's a
heightened
good
beings.
lesson to learn, yes?
Of course.
All right. Then why not love the game the way it is, unconditionally? Unconditionally. Because true unconditionality does not mean I love it unconditionally except for this one condition.
In other words, I have more surrendering to do.
You have less conditioning to do, which might be the same thing. Yes. So take a cue from the dog so you will make sure you're not barking up the wrong tree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Thank you. Okay, my question is, you talk about doing. And,
Yes. I do, don't I?
Yes, you do. And it made me wonder, as an inspiration, like maybe as a model where we're going to, what do you consider doing in your reality? What I understand is a note like you hang out in your Scoutcraft.
Hang out.
Yeah, I mean.
Like I am right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you spend a lot of time, in our terms, just hanging out in your Scoutcraft and?
Well, I suppose you could say in one context, obviously, every time there is what you perceive to be a transmission of this nature, I am in repose in my Scoutcraft.
And what were you doing just before that?
I was calibrating the electromagnetic field of your planet.
Did you spend very long at that?
Long is relative.
Okay.
In your terms, no.
Okay. You're not going to tell me much more about what you're doing, I guess.
Well, if you ask, I will.
Okay. Did you eat anything today?
No, we don't eat anymore.
Okay.
We have evolved beyond the idea of requiring solid sustenance. We now derive directly from electromagnetic energy within what you call the space-time continuum itself. We eat space-time.
But nevertheless, what I get is if you are in your scout craft
Yes.
in what appears to me to be like long linear time,
Yes.
that you're just basically a communicator and interactor with different reality frames.
That's my job.
Okay. So
I
that's-
am, in that sense, a liaison, a go-between, a connector, one who makes first contact with other civilizations. I'm also a pilot, obviously, because I have a craft. And I do many other things in terms of expressions of art and other forms of creativity. But I am primarily, in your terms, a liaison for first contact.
I would get, what I'm getting is for you to explain to us in linear terms what you do wouldn't totally make sense. Is that true? For instance, for you to suddenly be a creator of art,
Yes.
do you like show up on your planet to do it? Or
I can.
have you?
Yes, many times.
What did you make?
I have made a large sphere that contains many segments, each of which represents, in real time, the changing fluctuations of the electromagnetic fields and the collective consciousness of every single world I am having first contact with simultaneously, which at present count is about 27.
Okay.
And by creating that piece of art, others can actually see a visual representation of the changes in fluctuation and energy between the different worlds as I am communicating with them and how they change based on those communications. They can also sense, by deriving directly telepathically from it, how those communications change our world as well. So in that sense, it's a functional piece of art.
Yeah. Well, did you build it with just intention or with your hands or with machinery?
I built it with a seed and intention and energy fields. In other words, on our planet, we have a particular substance that to you would appear to be a crystalline-like substance that is similar to the idea of non-differentiated cells. So in that sense, we can impose upon it a certain intention that will allow the seed to grow into the piece of art, using an energy field as its template. By growing on this energy field, which is interdimensional in nature, the piece of art, similar to our spacecraft hulls, can actually be paper thin. But they are relatively undamageable because they grow in the dimensional shape, in the shape of the dimension we have created, and thus can take no other shape. Nothing can push them out of shape, because to push them out of shape would, in a sense, be like trying to push an entire dimension out of shape. So they take their shape from the template dimension we create through our intention. It draws upon what you would recognize euphemistically as zero-point energy in order to do this, from the energy that exists in the vacuum fluctuations within space and time. Is this making any sense to you in your language?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it also reminded me of like the stem cell research we're doing here.
Yes.
So we're getting towards that state.
That is an analogy for this concept.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are not what you would call, in that sense, organic cells, but they have a similar non-differentiation capacity. They can be made into whatever we wish them to be made into.
Okay. The other thing I want to is go over the creation reality loop that you mentioned before.
Yes, the circuit. Yes.
The circuit. We were discussing it last night at some length, and
At some length? What length? 3 feet?
yes.
Oh, all right.
And one of the things that came up was the idea that all those ideas of going from the personality construct to source, or all that is, and going back from, all
Yes.
those four things could be collapsed into any one act
Yes.
contains all those things.
Yes.
And I'd asked you yesterday to give an example, so may I give an example of what I thought?
Please.
Well, like, say the idea is a person believes that everyone should marry a woman, a man should marry a woman, that's the only source of marriage. And so a piece of experience of his would be he's getting married to a woman, that's his belief, he has the emotion of being happy about it,
Yes.
and then the action is actually doing it.
Yes.
And then that contains all those elements.
Yes.
And then using time,
Yes.
say later, he sees like two men walking hand in hand, and suddenly his belief is challenged,
Yes.
and now his belief goes a little bit unbalanced, and he feels like this negative energy, this negative emotion, because he doesn't believe that should happen. And
All right.
and
So he is reacting based on his definitions.
right.
All right.
And so that's just another another part of the feedback loop.
Yes.
I guess I was just, it makes sense to me, and it didn't at first.
Oh, all right. Thank you for providing an example that clarified it for you.
Okay.
Does that help?
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bashar. How's your day going?
Perfect. And yours?
Not too bad myself.
Oh, all right.
I have a question for you that I think your response, let's say you can give a 5-second response to this question.
Oh, all right.
You mentioned yesterday.
Shall I pull out my stopwatch?
Please. You mentioned yesterday that at the height of your communication with our civilization, the emotional state that you were exhibiting
Yes.
was a mere 5%
Yes.
of your ordinary day-to-day reaction.
The energy level.
The energy level.
Yes.
In a 5-second response to this audience, can you demonstrate by either word or body movement or vibration what your normal day-to-day response is on your planet?
No. It would harm the channel's body.
Okay?
The vessel would not be able to handle it. You follow me?
Yes, I do. Okay?
However, I will be happy to show you if you will meet us in dream time. Because
Okay.
there the limitations do not exist.
You're on
Thank you.
tonight. Let's link tonight. We'll do it there.
All right.
I do have a backup question, just in
A
case.
backup question.
Just in case.
All right.
Just in case I was denied this one.
Well, you are denied nothing, but
I understand. I understand.
go ahead.
On page 3 of the printout that you've provided for us, there's a picture of two triangles.
Yes.
Triangle 1, the top triangle, demonstrates balance and harmony
Yes.
with beliefs, emotions, and behavior
Yes.
being in sync.
Yes.
Triangle 2 represents a triangle of imbalance and chaos.
Yes.
Can you give us real-life examples of how beliefs, emotions, and thoughts are imbalanced either collectively or individually, like an unbalanced belief? What I'm looking at, let's just look at an unbalanced belief. Let's look at that part of the triangle.
All right.
I'm assuming that the midpoint of that leg represents a balanced
Well,
belief.
generally, yes. Of course, recognize there are many ways to have represented this, and this is a simplistic version for the purpose of illustration.
Okay. Well, I guess just explain the triangle. Just explain the unbalanced triangle.
Well, the idea would be that if you have a definition that you hold to be true, that somehow your existence is unworthy, then that would represent the idea of being out of alignment or out of balance with your true self. Therefore, by having an unbalanced definition, that will have a tendency to throw everything else out of balance and into chaos as well, because behavior comes from emotion, and emotion comes from belief.
Okay, so is that implying that the imbalanced triangle must start with an unbalanced belief?
As far as the personality construct is concerned, generally, yes. It doesn't always have to work that way, but generally it will. Now, the reason it doesn't always work that way is that because in what you call the beginning of the personality construct in time, in other words, when you are a baby, obviously you don't necessarily come in with absolute beliefs and definitions. However, you are then using the idea more of behavior and emotion to sort of feed into your cache of believability, to feed into your depository. And these beliefs are coming telepathically from, most likely, your parents at that point. And so as they feed you food, they also feed you beliefs. And you take on and inherit a lot of their beliefs. And they feed you through behavior in that sense and telepathically and go down through the emotionality and down into your depository in the personality construct and help you build a personality construct out of those beliefs. Then eventually, somewhere between the ages of 3 and 7 on your planet, the belief system then becomes so crystallized that the belief system then takes over from the parents and allows the personality of the child to develop from that point forward from the beliefs through the emotions to the behavior. So it doesn't start that way, but at a very young age, it soon becomes generally locked into that methodology. Does that help?
That helps very much.
And that's why many times when a person on your planet sometimes finds difficulty in getting in touch with a belief or changing a belief, sometimes it is helpful for them to actually go back to that childlike state where they can truly unlock from it. In a sense, go back to a time before the belief itself was crystallized. So they can, in a sense, melt it down and recrystallize it in a form that works for them now in their new personality construct. Make sense?
It does. So a newborn up to age 3 is operating more in the emotional leg of the triangle.
And behaviorally. That's why a baby is all about behavior. And that's what they pick up on, is behavior. Babies are extremely sensitive to body language because that is the first level of where telepathy is unconsciously expressed in a human, is through the behavior, through the body language. What you're actually saying, what you're actually believing, what you're actually transmitting to someone, you can see it in the body language, and most of you still have that capability if you really pay attention to it. You can tell when someone is, shall we say, saying one thing, but meaning another, because of their body language. You can pick up on that. In fact, even when you get good enough driving your automobiles, you begin to sense the body language of other cars, and you know exactly when a driver is about to cut you off. You can see the body language translating into the slightest motion of the car, and you knew exactly what they were going to do. So you all still possess that talent. But that is the primary way that a baby has of absorbing information, is through the telepathic contact and then through behavior, through body language. Then it starts filtering down in the idea of the emotional energy, and it starts resonating on that level, and that resonance starts building, starts using the fluid part of the personality construct, the part that's still fluid, the believability part, and it starts crystallizing patterns into that fluid, which then, somewhere, as I said, generally on average between ages 3 and 7 in your reality, becomes crystallized enough to actually start generating its own sense of cyclic behavior, its own sense of emotional pattern. And that starts reinforcing the idea of that personality up until the point, generally speaking, when you then psychically key into high psychic sensitivity on your own, which you call puberty. And that's why teenagers suddenly rebel. Suddenly all bets are off. Wait a minute, this personality that I've been fed isn't necessarily who I am in my soul. They start to actually make those connections. They have developed the personality to the point where it now suddenly recognizes it has reached a limit. And that limit now requires that it take a leap of faith, and that leap is that they have to really discover who they are. And that means they have to dive back into the soul blueprint, back to source, and reinvent themselves in the way that is now germane Now that they have gone beyond survival mode personality level, they now have to go into creative mode personality level to reinvent themselves, regenerate themselves, and be who it is they really are with respect to the themes in the soul blueprint they actually decided to experience in this life. Not that some of them haven't begun to play out before puberty, but now they can really take a handle on their own lives and after puberty reinvent themselves as adults. Now, of course, because of the way Earth, in a sense, has played itself out in some of the limitation games, you don't always give the teenagers the opportunity to really, truly reinvent themselves. Instead, very often, you actually prevent them from doing so by institutionalizing them in formats that do not allow them much creative thought. And that's why you get the idea expressed as rebellion.
I had an extremely rough time period.
Yes.
In that junior high age.
Yes.
That was horrible.
Yes.
And is there...
That's because you were not really given all the tools necessary to do the natural thing that needed to be done at that point, which was to truly reinvent yourself. So you did it the best way you could. And many of you are actually still doing it. What actually, and please do not take this the wrong way, it's not a judgment, and don't be down on yourselves and be depressed, please.
All right.
Many of you are still going through a process of reinvention that actually probably more often than not would normally naturally only take about a year. Nevertheless, you're doing fine.
I should have bought the manual.
This now is the manual.
Very good.
You are co-creating it with us, and that's why we are so excited to be writing this manual together with you. Because now you're really reading it, now you're really applying it, and now you really actually are becoming adults. And it's probably taken so long to get here that you're probably famished by now. So we would recommend that you might want to refresh yourselves, and after your lunch break, we will resume this connection with some more ideas to help lock these ideas in and propel you on your way. Enjoy your refreshment. We will resume contact momentarily.
Thank you, Bashar.
All right, guys, have fun. All right, let's say let us continue with the transmission, with the remainder of whatever follow-up questions may exist on the information we have already discussed.
Hello, Bashar.
And a you good day.
Yesterday you mentioned there's roughly 200 million oversouls for
Roughly.
For every 6.
It
roughly.
fluctuates.
Mm-hmm. And so that works out to roughly 30 souls per oversoul.
Yes.
And
There's
does
a
that
typical
mean,
average.
And are those roughly 30 gravitating to each other like the
Not necessarily.
Uh-huh.
Depends upon the theme they are exploring, what it is in life they need to experience. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they will act like the best of friends, sometimes they will be bitter enemies in your particular reality. Depends on what they have to reflect to one another or whether they should even interact at all.
And is there, so there is some kind of a recognition, but it could be...
It may not be conscious.
Conscious.
But it will be vibrational in terms of themes that are necessary to reflect to one another to help each other play out what it is you have decided to play out. It may never reach a conscious level. And sometimes it may actually be for the benefit of exploring the theme that it does not reach a conscious level.
And do you find in events like this that there's kind of a Darwinian screening process happening so that like-minded, connected souls are often brought together? In other words, is there there are people here who are sitting in the same room with one of their 29 other people at this moment?
A few.
Could you share that
No.
with us? Oh, okay. Okay, well then that's it.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Good day. Thank you. I'm caught in a little bit of a paradox. And
Oh,
a
all right.
confusion.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I know you have the information that will bring clarity.
Maybe,
Allow me.
maybe not.
um,
We never make that assumption, by the way.
okay.
We get what we get when we get it.
This is true.
If we don't get it, we don't need it.
I accept that.
Thank you. And your paradox?
Well, it's between spiritual purity and activity in the world, and it relates
Between spiritual purity and activity in the world.
success in the world, probably.
And success in the world.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yes. And also the idea of enlightenment. And I'm wondering if the idea of enlightenment is connection on a multidimensional level to the oversoul, awareness of that.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is, but that's certainly one way of expressing it.
I've been expressing it as the idea of dissolving, reliquefying the personality matrix.
All right. That's another way of looking at it. These are all descriptions.
Descriptions.
Yes. Enlightenment is a state of being. A state of being, obviously, of heightened awareness. Now, what that means, and in terms of what methodology you use to represent that particular awareness, that really is up to you and almost doesn't matter.
On our planet, we've had, I think in the history, to get those heightened levels of awareness, we had to retreat and disassociate from activity in the world.
Some people find that that works for them. Others find just the opposite. They had to dive in more fully in order to actually find their spirituality. And everything in between.
So there is no particular path. It's all about...
If there was only one way, there would only be one person. Look around. Each person is a path. You're not on a path, you are a path. And if you exist, and if all the other people also exist, then that shows you that all those paths are valid, or they wouldn't exist. Because creation, in that sense, does not create things which are pointless in creation.
Is enlightenment the eventual evolution for each of us? If we follow the path of our
Well, what do you
excitement?
mean by eventual? It may not happen in this lifetime for many people on Earth.
Right. No, with that understanding, is at some point in evolution, over the period of reincarnation or a period of lifetimes, is that
I understand what you
yeah.
are saying. And the answer in some senses is yes, but only because everything already exists, and therefore on one level you're already enlightened. If you want to look at it as a linear time frame perspective and say that at some point in your evolution will you all reach enlightenment, then yes, because you all already exist there now.
So by following the path of my highest excitement and by
Yes.
committing, by aligning with my soul blueprint,
Yes.
thank you,
You're welcome.
then whatever level of evolution I am going to experience in this incarnation will happen.
Yes.
And there's no reason to think about it other than that.
Correct. You will make all of the appointments you intended to make in this life. All of you. You will not miss any of them with one exception. You will only miss your appointment if you are afraid you will miss your appointment. So if you stop worrying about missing your appointments, you will make them all. Because you will allow your life to play out in a natural, synchronistic manner, and everything that you really needed to get done in this life will get done. What doesn't get done didn't need to be done. Remember, you are an eternal and infinite spirit. What's your hurry?
No winning, just enjoying this
Yes.
moment now.
Just being, just living, just doing what excites you. Just expressing who you are as fully as you possibly can. That's all you really need to do. To live a full life and live out any so-called mission, purpose, appointment, or what have you that you intended to experience in this life. That's all you have to do. Do the best you can. Follow your excitement. Be yourself. That's all. It's really that simple. It really, really, really is.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you want to make it more complicated, that's up to you.
No, thank you.
All right.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to meet on the dream plane.
All right. Now, understand, we meet many of you on the dream plane all the time, and a lot of you simply don't remember.
Yes.
But you can be more open to it, more open to remembering it. Just ask for assistance, and remember that sometimes the ability to remember the encounters you are having in other dimensions and other realities also is intimately connected to your ability to be yourself on Earth as well. The more open you are on Earth, in some ways, the more capable you are of remembering your encounters in other realms. You follow me?
The more
The
open...
more you are yourself on Earth, the more capable you are of remembering encounters in other realms off the Earth as well.
The more fully present
Yes,
in this
yes,
moment.
yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Does that help?
Bashar, I am grateful. Thank you.
So are we. Thank you.
Hi, Bashar.
And you good day.
And thank you for this interaction.
And you as well.
Yesterday, when we were talking about grays and parahumans, and you
Parallel humans.
parallel humans,
Yes.
and you mentioned gray factions,
Yes.
which you've mentioned over the years.
Yes.
And I always thought about it in a very 3D linear way.
Oh, all right. No
And then-
surprise there.
Yeah, really. Exactly. Why, after all these years? But then this morning, my brain kind of exploded.
Oh.
Yeah, and I thought, wait a minute, everything's multidimensional. There's infinite amounts of everything, including planet Earth.
Yes.
So I'm sure very, very many planet Earths had the experience that led to very, very many planets with grays.
Yes.
And so these factions, perhaps, rather than being this linear projection I had, are from different time streams from different probable
Well,
Earths.
the answer is actually both.
Uh-huh.
There are different factions because there are different parallel time streams, and there are actually different factions in most of the time streams.
Right, yeah. So that led me to speculation.
Oh, all
And
right.
I know...
Is that near some other town that we would know of?
Yeah, it is.
Is that like Speculation, Nevada?
No, it's Speculation, California.
Oh, all right.
So I'm wondering at this point, I know that you've been in touch with other probable Earths that are in the same phase that we're in.
Some.
And that some of them, I guess, I would guess more than one, are going to pull off the transformation, and some of them probably aren't.
And some of them already have not, and some of them already have.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I thought. So since some of them probably already have,
Yes.
and some of them actually already have,
Yes.
where are we at this point?
What, relative to all of them?
Well, relative to what your interest is in them.
Relative to my interest in them.
Yes, like you're tracking us, you're watching us, and,
Yes.
and what we do has directly to do with your existence in the future. So
Yes.
do we pull it off is my question, and can you
Do
tell
you
that
think
yet?
I would be speaking with you if you didn't?
Well, you've been speaking to us for a long time, and it was up for grabs for a while, was my understanding.
Not from our perspective.
Okay, so it's always been in the bag for us?
As far as our reality is concerned,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
But you have to understand that the Earth that we were talking to begin with is not the Earth we're talking to now.
Right, and I was thinking about that, too.
Oh, so you are making a linear connection.
Well,
In that sense, no. It was up for grabs in terms of the Earth we began speaking with.
right,
But in terms of the Earth we are speaking to now, it has always been in the bag.
okay. But this Earth changes all the time,
Yes.
and I mean...
Nevertheless, there's a high degree of momentum toward the bag.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And then, you know, I was thinking with the, I was using like the oversoul situation as an analogy, and I was thinking of fourth density, fifth density, et cetera.
Yes.
And it seems to me that that third density would have more finite beings in it because it's more dispersed.
Would have
It's not
more
as dense.
finite expression.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, is your civilization close to where you function as less individuals and more, I mean, do you end up being...
We are capable of functioning as both simultaneously,
Uh-huh.
individuals and a collective.
Okay. And then as we've spoken to you sometimes when you've been non-physical, And
Yes.
from the non-physical perspective, you
Yes.
function as a collective, right?
And an individual, because there
Right.
is the capability in certain non-physical levels of still expressing yourself as an individual, even though you may also be an aspect of a collective.
Right. So that's kind of like a parallel to Oversoul, right?
Well, mechanically speaking, it may function in a similar fashion, yes.
Okay. All right.
Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Good day to you. I work with an energy that identifies itself as Emmanuel.
All
And
right.
my question is that on several radio shows, listeners would call in and say that they had profound healings and they were familiar with this energy.
Yes.
And they would ask me if this was the same Emmanuel that another person has written about, a book called Emmanuel.
Yes.
And I don't know enough about oversouls versus energies that I might be tapping into. Could you give me any clarify
You
this for
are
me?
working with another aspect of the same energy. It isn't therefore exactly the same because it's expressed differently through you and is its own autonomous expression. But it is connected back to the same basic idea that the other ones issue from as well. You might want to refer to it as an oversoul level or something similar as a collective in that sense, expressing different aspects autonomously in different ways through different people at different places and different times.
Thank you.
Does that help?
That does help.
All right.
So when I was a little girl and Emmanuel told me that he was an oversoul of Jesus.
Yes.
And I was raised Jewish and didn't really have that much of a background of Christianity.
Well, that's all right. Jesus was raised Jewish as well.
Absolutely. It was in 1993, I went to Midnight Mass, and they were singing a song in church called Emmanuel.
Yes.
And I asked a friend of mine why they were using the word Emmanuel, and she said, well, that's another name for Jesus.
Yes.
So my question to you is would this be in alignment with Christ energy?
Peripherally, yes. It is not expressed exactly that way, but it is, in that sense, vibrationally in alignment with the oversoul aspect that you also recognize as Christ consciousness or Buddha nature, in that sense, Krishna spirit. It operates on a similar frequency, but it expresses itself slightly differently.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help you?
Yes, it does. So the people that respond to my work, let's say I get 2,000 emails after one radio show.
Yes.
The people that respond to my work, are they part of the same soul family that feels so comfortable?
No, not necessarily. They don't have to be part of the same soul family to be needing to use that particular frequency to accomplish what they need to accomplish in this particular life. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
In other words, an artist, even though they may buy paint from a particular paint store, doesn't need to be a family member of the people that own the paint store just to use their paint.
Right.
But their paint may be exactly what the artist needs to make that painting. So they will be attracted to use that paint, even though they may not necessarily be connected to that family that produced the paint any more than simply buying paint from the store that buys paint from the family. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course.
So it doesn't have to be a family soul connection distinctly in that sense in order for someone to be attracted to a vibration.
Okay.
This is the same idea also with the concept of relationships, where people talk about such things as twin flames and the idea of my soul mate. Anyone that you are in a strong relationship with that is reflecting to you what you need to know about yourself and what you're reflecting to them so they can know about themselves, in that sense, at that moment, that person is your soulmate. Even if in the next moment you never see each other again. Because the idea is simply about resonance and what you are attracted to for whatever purpose you are attracted to it. And in that moment of attraction and in that moment of reflection, they are exactly who you need to be interacting with, or you would not have been attracted to them for whatever reason. It may not be the reason your mind thinks, because your mind doesn't always allow itself to operate on the capacity or the level where it recognizes that sometimes things can lure you in certain directions, not because a certain thing needs to come to fruition, but only because you need to move in that direction. as part of your path. That's why it is important to not hold too strongly onto the concept of goal orientation. Because the thing that's going on in any interaction is the thing that needs to be focused on, not where you think it will lead, because you often do not know. And often even cannot guess. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Does it help round out the concept a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
So, thank you. My question, this is I think an important question for me personally.
Yes.
When I am doing this channeling,
Yes.
there are times when the energy is so strong,
Yes.
and I wonder, I can only assume that it's all perfect and whatever comes through is exactly perfect.
Exactly. Even if what comes through is, I don't know, then that's perfect. It is always perfect for whatever the interaction is. It is always the perfect thing that it is. Not perfect in the sense of being compared to some ideal. It is perfect for whatever it is that's going on, because it's a perfect version of that thing, and that has value equal to anything else that could have happened.
Right.
Now, it may change, it may grow, it may operate differently from time to time, but whatever it is at that moment, whatever it is delivered, as long as you believe you are doing the best you can to allow it to come through, to be of service, then whatever it is for that moment is exactly what it needed to be for you and everyone else involved, whether you know it or not. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Does that help?
Very much so.
Why, thank you.
So this was a major turning point in my healing career. Back in 1993, I had a close friend who tripped over her cat, hit her head, and she lost her memory, but at the same time she also broke her wrist. She was in a lot of pain. So a couple weeks later, she wasn't healing very well. She called me with terrible migraine headaches, and I went to her place, and as Emmanuel says, we're going into frequencies in harmony with who we are as spiritual beings.
Yes.
So we can be, do, and have in life
Yes.
all that makes our heart sing.
Yes.
And her frequency shifted, and there was a very strong energy in the room. And she identified herself as an alien by the name of Julie. And she said that the reason why my friend Ann had hit her head so badly and actually had a moment of unconsciousness is that she had a realization about a ship. And they didn't want her, this is what I was told, they didn't want her to remember. And so the intention wasn't for her to break her wrist, it was just for her to forget. Well, I got very upset.
Why?
And I told Julie that they had to reverse this immediately.
Why?
I got upset that she broke her wrist.
Why?
Because she was in a lot of pain.
Yes.
And I just asked Julie, I said, would you please reverse this? And she said yes.
All right.
She said, in exchange for me teaching them more about compassion. I said, fine. So this is what Julie said. She said she wanted me to just hold a frequency and leave and take a shower for 20 minutes. And I did that, and Ann agreed. And when I came back into the room, Ann no longer had a broken wrist. Her
Yes.
fingers were totally normal.
All
She
right.
went back to the same orthopedic surgeon. They took her out of the cast.
All right.
And her
I
pain
understand.
completely went away. Well, at that moment in time, I realized I wasn't doing any of the healing. I was just holding a frequency.
Of course.
Which has made it much easier for me.
No healer does the healing.
That's
The
right.
healer simply gives off the frequency that allows the person, if they are willing to match it, to heal themselves.
Okay.
That's what a healer does. A healer is a vibrational resonant example of what frequency the other person can achieve that would allow them to simply allow their own healing to occur. That's how a healer heals, by letting the other heal themselves. Does that help you?
Oh, most definitely.
Thank you. That is enough.
Thank you so much.
Are there other clarification questions before we proceed?
Yes, Bashar, thank you.
All right, and good day.
Thank you for reminding us once again of what we already know.
Thank you for allowing me to do so.
And I
It
need-
also helps us remember who we are when we do.
Thank you, and I also need you to help me remind me of one other thing.
And what would that be?
Before lunch, you were talking about becoming the best receivers we can be.
Yes.
And removing all toxins.
Yes,
on
if possible.
emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual
Yes.
levels. So my question relates to in being conscious of the journey, of being aware of the pause,
Yes.
responding differently,
Yes.
and going through 4 months of eating raw foods.
Yes.
I have for a long time felt that I know the communication is there, and I hope others can relate to this, but I can't find the right radio station
The right radio station meaning what?
for conscious communication. And there's part of my soul.
What makes you think it's supposed to come in the way or the manner that you have been led to believe it must come?
Because it comes that way sometimes, but it seems to keep,
Then why don't you listen for the other ways that it comes at the other times?
and I do.
Well,
Um,
don't you see it?
I feel it more than see it.
I see. Do you have
No, I feel.
synchronicity in your life?
Yes.
Well, that's seeing it. Communication from higher levels often manifests itself as the synchronicities that occur in your life. Because that sometimes is an easier way to get the point across, rather than having it be vocalized or auditory or some other way that you expect it should come. So the idea is that you're constantly receiving it. You're just, to some degree, invalidating that all the ways you're receiving it are not equally powerful to the one way in which you wish to receive it. Do you follow?
I do, and I express gratitude in the ways that I do receive it.
All right.
But there is, one of my themes is always feeling that I have to be better than I am at that time, which I'm aware of and working on.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Playing with.
All right, thank you.
Journeying with.
All right. And?
So one of the questions that I've been asking for, part of my excitement
Yes.
is in being a channel of frequency and sound.
Yes. In what manner?
I do
Singing?
No, it's not melodic. It's more electrical toning. It comes out more electronic, is the only way I can describe it.
But you are using your voice.
I'm opening my mouth and
Yes.
sound is coming out.
Yes. All right.
And it comes out in different levels and people react to it, and I just open it up to be whatever it's meant to be.
All right, and?
For the gathering. But I've been asking for
what?
An interpreter chip.
An interpreter chip. An interpreter chip.
Yes.
What interpretation do you need other than the response that you are getting from the people exposed to it?
Because what I'm getting also is questions of what's happening. And I've been told...
Well, they'll find out, won't they? What do you want to do? Remove all the surprises from the experience? I have to tell you exactly what to expect here, otherwise somehow you're not going to be able to get what you need. That's not the way it's going to work best, necessarily. The idea is to leave some mystery in it, so that you give them something to deal with. If you explain every little bit and piece, they will not really learn what they need to learn through their own processes of receiving the toning. Some of it must remain a mystery. Mystery is part of the recipe. It's not a missing piece. Mystery is part of the formula, not a missing piece. That's where your assumptions are throwing you off. You think that when there's a mystery, that it means there's a gap in information.
Right.
No. Mystery is part of the mechanism. Why do you think we don't tell you everything?
Well, I often get told I'm not allowed to know something.
There you go. That's why. Mystery is part of the process. Otherwise, no process occurs. And you don't really make it your own. Mystery is what allows you to make it your own, to input your own unique way of interpreting it. Every person is their own interpreter chip. Let them be so. You cannot provide a universal interpreter chip.
And don't take away their power by trying to interpret it.
Exactly. Now you understand.
So that it's more powerful to let them interpret it themselves.
It is. Because then they've made it their own. And it's not yours.
Right.
It's theirs. And that's the only way you can really teach something to someone, is to let them make it their own. They cannot just parrot what you know to be true. They have to find out that it's true for themselves, and only through their own mysterious process will they do so. That's where the phrase in your society comes from, that God works in mysterious ways.
Right.
Listen to another way of phrasing that. God works in mysterious ways. Without the mystery, God doesn't work.
Thank you.
You
And what
understand?
yes, no, I do. And one of the senses I got when we were going through the Soul Blueprint history, you mentioned that frequency and resonance is the key.
Yes.
And so my sensation, my feeling was that there is an opportunity there to open and allow Source to come through to help people
And that's what
using
you're doing.
frequencies.
That
Yeah,
is
so-
what you are doing. But you have to realize that mystery has its own resonance, and that has to be part of the song. For without mystery, there is no beauty in discovery. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yes, thank you, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Good day. This is in connection to living in the moment. The human race could be compared to an ant colony that busies itself to the rhythm of time.
All right.
Time is also a commodity that most of us feel a lack of, thereby impairing our ability to live not only in the moment, but to live in alignment with our spirit.
Yes.
How can we free ourselves from the strings of time? And could you explain how you live time, or what time represents for you?
All right. We are much more fluid and flexible with respect to the concept of time. By living more in the moment, we don't create as much time, because that's actually what you're doing. You're creating time and space. It's not something that exists in that sense without you. The more details you create to work with, the more segregation and separation and compartmentalization you create within your consciousness, the more space and time you have to create in order to have room to have all those details and compartments. But the more holistic and integrated you become, the less time you need to create, because you exist more in the now moment, and if you are holistic, then everything that you are fits in that one now moment, or more so. So, while we have come from an evolution that allows us to understand what the experience of space-time is, at this point in our evolution, we don't experience as much of it because we don't create as much of it, because we don't need as much of it. And we don't have the assumptions of time that many of you do, in terms of needing more of it to get more done. In fact, we get more done by creating less of it, because things occur in the now, more instantaneously, and don't need time. The point is to understand that everything already exists, so that if you allow it to manifest, then you don't have to create time for it to take to manifest. Does that make sense?
In a sense, yes.
All right.
Would
And
you suggest that we discard watches and clocks?
some people can find that it would be beneficial if they didn't pay so much attention to that and focus not so much on time but timing, knowing that if they are really following their joy and being who they are, and they can really get practiced at that and be comfortable living in that now space, then they will be where they need to be when they need to be there, interacting with exactly who they need to interact with in exactly perfect timing without paying attention to any clocks at all. Very often you will find, for example, that when we determine that a time, in your terms, has been set aside for an interaction with us, we will sense the timing of the end of the interaction, but our timing sense will often coincide precisely to the second to the amount of time that was set aside for the interaction, even though we do not have clocks. So some people have joked that we must be wearing watches because we know exactly when it is, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but we don't. We just know when the timing is done, and it happens to coincide with your time frame because we allow it to find its natural place. So we have no clocks at all. But we are also very used to the idea of trusting our timing, knowing that we can never be early or late, but perfectly on time for whatever it is that happens in our lives. And that we will miss nothing, and that nothing will miss us. Does that make sense?
Yes, so am I to understand you're suggesting to learn to listen inward
I am.
and to trust and let go?
I am.
Thank you.
Does that help you?
Very much, thank you.
Well, it's about time. Thank you.
On this same topic of time,
Yes.
some scientists that I've spoken with in the last year are studying the possibility of the fact that time for us on the earth at this time
Yes.
seems to have changed in some way, so that what was once, in other words, the way they're expressing it
Yes.
is that perhaps what was once a full hour
Yes.
many years ago
Yes.
now seems to be more like, just arbitrarily stating it, something like perhaps 45 minutes or something,
Yes.
that there has been some sort of a compression.
Yes.
And that while
Well,
we're
this
still...
coincides with your change in consciousness about your relationship to the idea of needing so much time or not needing so much time.
Well, are you saying that we're feeling that we're needing more or less time? I don't...
Less. You're creating less time.
We're creating less time.
Yes.
Well, I guess that's good. But it seems that with all these time-saving devices that we have and the computers and so forth, we seem to be they're supposed to save time, and yet it seems as though so much more time is being expended with these time-saving devices.
Maybe, maybe not. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced getting simply totally lost in something that you are doing so that you do not experience the passage of time?
Yes.
Well, the point I am making is that when you have that experience, it's not just that you're ignoring the passage of time, you're actually not creating the time you don't experience. And that's how you stay young. Because when you live in the moment and don't create time, you don't age. So when you do what you love to do, and time flies by, it isn't that time is flying, it's not being generated at all. When then you reconnect to the mass consensus time frame of your society and agree, oh, well, yes, I must have been there for 5 hours because I agree with you that it is now 5 o'clock, you're reconnecting into the consensus out of convenience, but that doesn't mean you actually spent 5 hours doing what you were doing. You spent only the experiential time you actually had. And if when you started and then when you finished, it felt like it was only 5 minutes, for you, literally, it only was 5 minutes. You follow?
Yes. But is there anything that can be... Is this all in our minds, or is there anything that can be empirically measured so that, in fact, for our planet, something has happened to the way that we measure time?
Well, you see, that's exactly the point. The way you measure time is what determines what time is, because time doesn't exist without your choice to measure it. And as you change your consciousness and your idea of yourself, you measure things differently. So, no, it doesn't exist without your measurement of it. And as you change the measurement, so you change time.
So when they say that time is speeding up, it's simply our perception
Yes.
of what's happening.
Yes, because you're creating it to do so. You follow?
Yes.
Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Now then, let us look into the idea, once again, of soul blueprinting, and the idea that we have discussed of your own personal journeys, and the idea that has been discussed of things that you are bringing in from parallel realities, other time tracks, other lives concurrently coexistent, and agreements and themes that you have made with soul family members or others, and random acts, and take all of this notion and understand how it overlays with your pie chart, indicative of different frequencies, different slices, different vibrations, different degrees, different percentages, so to speak, of all the different vibrations that form your collective history as you have created it to be in linear space-time, and how you filter all of this through your personality prism to create the reality generation and experiential circuit. And please understand that when you look at all of this, that it is all a symbol. It is all a symbol of a vibration in your consciousness. That's all it is. All these charts, all the mandalas, all the words, all the numbers, all the writings, all the graphics. It's a symbol of a vibration in your consciousness. Because that's all there is consciousness. That's all you are, is consciousness. You have created the entire journey that you have created within your consciousness. You have not really come from anywhere. You have not really gone anywhere. You have not really come from any when, or gone any when, or are going any when. It is always here and now, but from a different perspective. So experience and creation are nothing but shifts in perspective of the same one here and now that always has been, is now, and always will be. But the point is that this here and now, in principle, is infinite. And being infinite and eternal can appear from different perspectives to be an infinite number of things, seen in an infinite number of ways. That's what all of you and all of us are all the different ways of looking at the one here and now, all that is. We are all, as we have said, the eyes of God, looking at itself from all the different angles it can, knowing itself, seeing itself, perceiving itself, experiencing itself in all the ways that are possible within the idea that it is. So, your life is a microcosm of that idea. You are the core of your life. You are the all that is of your life. And if you wish to see yourself as a different person, acting in different ways, all you need to do is go to that core, go to that center, and understand you are already all the different things you think you are becoming, or you think you have been. You are already those things right now. To whatever degree you are willing to know that, not just believe it, but know it with absolute certainty, is the degree to which you will perceive that you are who you prefer to be. That's all it takes. The willingness to know who you really are, what you really are, the willingness to see yourself from the perspective of your preference, knowing it is just as valid as any other perspective you have ever had or will ever have. And it's all about how you see yourself. Knowing that each is valid, each is true, that all truths are true, that all paths are valid, and just another way of being who and what you are. Give in to that would be my suggestion. The rewards are great. And we talk of knowing. Knowing, in some sense, is that which is beyond believing. Knowing is that which is ingrained within you without even thinking about it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, without hesitation, without even the concept of process. It is simply that which you know to be true. Which you know to be true. And if you really, 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 really take stock of what is simply obvious in life, then you will know what we know about you. That you are eternal, infinite aspects of creation. That you determine utterly what you experience in your reality. That you have freedom to choose forever and ever who and what you are. because you are made in the image of God. And that means you are an aspect of all that is. And an aspect of all that is, that knows itself as an aspect of all that is, will see the work of all that is in everything that he or she does. Will see the work of all that is in every reflection that you see of yourself. Be it light, be it dark, doesn't matter. All that is all that is. Without exception, without exception, without exception. All that is unconditional, without condition, without condition, without condition. This is the thing we mean when we talk about letting it be obvious. For even if many of you would only simply follow the literal dictionary definition of such words as unconditional, when you apply them to all that is, that knowledge alone would erase most of your questions and doubts. For if you truly believed, if you truly knew that when you say that all that is truly unconditionally loving, that you really mean it is unconditional, then there would be absolutely no condition, no circumstance or situation in which all that is would ever do anything that would be less than unconditional in its love for you. And that right there would allow you to know there is no need to judge yourselves, find yourselves wanting, lacking, unworthy, undeserving. Because if all that is loves you unconditionally, why not take its word for it that you deserve it? Now, you can argue with God if you want, because that's your right. God loves you so unconditionally that it allows you to disagree with it, that you are unconditionally loved. And that shows you exactly how unconditionally loved you are, because you can actually know or believe or think or experience that you're not unconditionally loved. And that is real unconditional love. Doesn't try to make you believe you're unconditionally loved. Doesn't force you in any way, shape, or form to believe or to know you are unconditionally loved. That's how unconditionally loved you are. So take that to heart as an obvious indicator that if you are allowed to think you are undeserving, then you are certainly allowed to believe you're anything else that you want to believe, that you want to know that you are. Why not? Perhaps more of you would find greater benefit in your spiritual path, in your spiritual growth, in your spiritual pursuit, if instead of asking why, more often you would ask why not? Why not? And to understand that physical reality as an experience is no less spiritual than any other experience, because you are spirit. It has been said many times on your planet by those that understand and recognize that you are not humans having a spiritual experience. You are spirits having a human experience. So allow yourself to understand that the human experience is just as spiritual as any other experience, because a spirit is having it. How can it be anything other than spiritual? A spirit is having the experience. And so, as many of your Zen masters say, chopping wood, carrying water, the so-called normal things of life can be just as spiritual an act as anything. Anything. If done from a place where you know who you are, and done from a place where you understand the relationship of what you are doing to all that is, and done from a place where you know that it is simply one valid way just one out of an infinite variety of ways to express all that is, to have an experience of all that is, for all that is to have an experience of itself. All that is, when it experiences itself, chopping wood, carrying water, cleaning out a closet, does those things, in that sense, as all that is, in the way that all that is would do it. You can too. Remember that everything is neutral. The meaning you give it is the effect you get out of it. So if you chop wood, carry water, clean your closet as if it is somehow beneath all that is dignity to do such a thing, you will only experience it in a limited way. And all the frustration and resistance will come to bear that are part and parcel of the idea of viewing something as beneath, not worthy of, less than. But if you do it as all that is, then you will find the miracles and the magic are the natural order of things. And the idea of chopping wood, carrying water, cleaning closets will be done in a manner that is itself an expression of joy. And you never know what that actually may mean. You may actually wind up physically doing it yourself, or by staying in the appropriate state of being in unconditional joy with the idea that everything is an expression of all that is, then you may find that you will attract into your life synchronistically some unexpected methodology by which that thing will get done, and it won't necessarily be in the way that you thought. Perhaps someone will simply knock on your door and say, "I'm here to clean your closet for you." Perhaps you will open the closet door and all of the stuff will simply be gone. Or perhaps you will roll up your sleeves and say, "The time it's going to take me to clean this closet is going to give me the time I need to think about a process I'm going through, and it will be the perfect amount of time, and by the finish of the cleaning of the closet, I will have come to a conclusion that I need to come to. So I will use it as a meditation." There are infinite ways in which you could look at this if you come from the perspective of doing it from the viewpoint of all that is. The point is, your imagination will illuminate, and your synchronicity and life will illuminate for you what would be the path of least resistance and the most joyful way in which something can be experienced if you will come from that vibration, and not the vibration that somehow this can't possibly be something that has anything at all to do with what I really should be doing. But if that is what you have created, then at that moment, you have created it in your life for a reason. Even if you've created it so that you will know you never want to create it again, it's still there at that moment for the reason to learn that lesson. So using it fully will allow you to learn the lesson and find out you may never need to do that again. But in order for you to find that out, you have to use it for what it is when it's there. Because if you ignore it, it's like not seeing a stepping stone and not stepping on it, refusing to step on the next stepping stone, and yet wanting to get to the stepping stone beyond it, which cannot happen unless you step on this one first, because it is designed to get you to the next one. If you see it that way, you will step on it with joy, and it will propel you automatically to the next one very rapidly, very efficiently, very smoothly, very easily. But the longer you sit there and stubbornly refuse that that stepping stone has anything at all to do with you, the longer you will stay on the stone you are on. And the farther away that other stone will look. Because it will seem as if you have filled the gap between the stones with so much space and time that you will never get there. It's all a matter of perspective. Because perspective is all there is. There is no physical reality other than the perspective of the experience you choose to have. That's what physical reality is. Your perspective of it. They are not two separate things. Even your quantum physicists now understand there is actually no observation without an observer. The observer and the observation create each other simultaneously. Your perspective of physical reality is physical reality, and thus becomes your experience of physical reality. Perspective and experience, in that sense, are synonymous. Does that make sense to you? All right. Then relax. Let some of the air out of your thoughts. Deflate. Deflate. Let out all the extra things that don't really need to be there. Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. Take a deep breath in. And let out all the things that you don't really need to keep carrying with you like excess baggage. Yes, very good. There you go. Now you're getting it. Many of you have been carrying these bags since childhood. Drop them. You don't need them on the trip you're on. Everything you need will be provided for when you get there. Like a fine resort hotel. You are going to a spa, and everything you need is there. Everything. Transportation, clothing, food, relaxation, enjoyment, scenery, people, discussion, everything. Everything you need is already there. Stop toting along all those heavy bags. There's no room for them on the plane. It's a very small plane. It's a tiny little plane. Now, step onto that lovely little plane, which is built for nothing but comfort, for nothing but conversation, for nothing but relaxation. And lift off with nothing but the clothes on your back, or naked if you wish. Fly through the air and land. And step out and realize you are far, far away from where you took off, but it only took a moment to get there. Because in reality, that place was always right next door. And now that you have deflated your thoughts and let the air out of some of them, you find out that the only reason it seems so far away is because you had created so much space and time between you and it. When in fact, there's really no space and time between you and it at all. It's all right here, all right now. And the temperature and the atmosphere of where you have landed is absolutely ideal for you. And amazingly enough, ideal for every other passenger that arrives, even if it is different from yours. It is a marvelous, multidimensional place that adjusts itself to everything you enjoy, personally and automatically. And believe me, in the universe, even in the physical plane, there actually are such places that can accomplish this. Where no matter how many people go to a location, everything about the location adjusts itself automatically to every single individual, no matter how different it may be from the individual standing right next to them. So you are at one of these universal resorts that knows you exactly who you are, reads your vibration like a book, and exactly reflects the knowing part of yourself, the deserving part of yourself, the loving part of yourself, the creative part of yourself. and reminds you that these are actually not parts, but that these are states of being that are the whole of who you are when you choose to be. It reminds you of this constantly. It bathes you in a vibrational atmosphere of constant support of being totally who you are at every moment, without worry, without thought, without control, without manipulation, without scheduling, without time. Everything unfolds perfectly, perfect timing. You find yourself interacting with whom exactly you need to interact with, when you need to interact with them. You find yourself winding up in exactly the room in the resort you need to be in, exactly when you need to be there, and staying for exactly how long you feel like staying. And as soon as you leave and go somewhere else and show up, everyone turns and says, "You're right on time." Let yourself understand that this place symbolizes and represents your true natural self, your instinctive self. The you that knows who you are without thinking about it. The you that absolutely knows who you are without thinking about it, without being told, without being judged, without being measured, but supported simply for the absolute knowledge that you have of knowing who you are. Breathe in the air and know that you are breathing in yourself. The atmosphere, the vibration that is you, the you know yourself to be. You know yourself to be. Without the fuss, without the muss, without the 1,000 little thoughts that you have agreed to allow yourself to nag yourself with about how you should be this and how you should be that in order to be better, in order to be worthy, in order to be deserving, in order to be wanted, in order to be loved, in order to be taken seriously, in order to be thought of as having a place in existence. To earn your place in the world. Nonsense. Were that you didn't deserve it, believe me, believe me, believe me, you wouldn't exist. Do what you want to do because you love to do it. The expression of being yourself as fully as you can is the only coin you need. And it is what will allow abundance to come to you in whatever form it needs to, coin or otherwise, that represents the path of least resistance to being yourself. You are abundant because all that is the very essence of abundance itself. And if you think all that is would create you, and that there would not be enough for you, you have a very poor picture of all that is. And you are making poverty out of abundance by seeing all that is as that poor in its creation, that it could somehow create you and leave you out of the ability to be supported by its abundance. It has allowed you to experience that idea, but you are creating whatever poverty you create from your abundance, even if it's an abundance of poverty. It's still abundance. You have everything in that sense already. All you have to do is allow yourself to be who you are, to see that, to know that clearly. Just be who you are. And the reflection from the universe will be clear. But do it without expectation of reflection, for then you are standing outside of your knowingness once again. Stay within your knowingness. Choose the state you wish to express. Because you have no other choice. Because that's who you are. Not because it will get you this, not because it will get you that, but because it's who you are. That declaration is all that's necessary for the universe to respond to you as fully. So you don't have to make it conditional. I'll be this if I get that. If I get that, I'll be this. When you make it conditional, the universe can only reflect conditional experiences to you. Make it unconditional. Make it unconditional. That you are willing to be who you are because that's who you are. There's no other choice. Make it unconditional. And if you make it unconditional, you will have the unconditional experience itself from all that is. Take a deep breath, unconditionally, and let it out unconditionally. Congratulations. What is the time frame remaining for this transmission? Within what you call your 15 minutes, which to me could be yesterday or tomorrow, or right now, and which to you can also be the same. Allow yourselves to ponder for a moment what it really means to feel unconditionalness, absolute lack of expectation, absolute lack of judgment, absolute lack of lack, unconditionalness, where you know, and nothing has the power to tell you that you don't know what you know. Relax into that understanding. Relax into that feeling. It is your birthright. It is who you are. It is who we are actually speaking to when we speak to you. You may think we're speaking to your personalities, and obviously we are including them. But the direct communication is from who we know we are to who we know you are. It is between our knowing selves. So in that you have co-created this interaction. Understand. Understand. Stand under this foundation. Support it. Understand that whatever symbol we represent to you in terms of our ability to know is just a reflection of what we see in you, or you would not be able to experience it from us. It's just that in these interactions, you are willing to allow us to reflect back to you who you actually are. You can do that anytime you wish. You don't need to be in these kinds of specific interactions in this specific way, because we are always having an interaction. Always, on some level or other. Key into that. Tap into that. And know it is just as real. On its own terms, in its own way, it is just as real. Don't make a difference where none needs to exist. You know we are always in touch. You know you are always connected to all that is. You know this. I know you know this. And we thank you for allowing us to remind you that you know this. And for reminding you that you always have the choice to know this or forget this. But to now simply remember that even when you choose to forget, you are still using your connection to forget that you have one. And now, if we had gambling on our planet, we would bet that you actually will never completely forget who you are again. And I think we will win that bet. Because the house always wins. And we all live in the same house. Now. We all live in the same house now. Welcome home. Take your break. And if everyone's ready, we'll go into the final segment. Y'all having a good time? Okay. Again, thank you very much for being here this weekend. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun for us, and hopefully a lot of fun for you. And thanks. You're welcome. Thank you. Or I'll say, let us conclude this transmission with any clarifications and questions that you may have about any of the material that has already been delivered. Are there questions? All right. Organize yourselves into question mode.
Hello again, Bashar.
And a you good day?
Bashar, earlier today you mentioned that you didn't have all the answers.
No.
Would you be kind enough to share with us one of the questions to which you have yet to have an answer?
If I don't really have the answer, I don't have a question.
Do you mean to say that you don't question anything?
We are always searching. But what I mean by what I have just said is, usually when you have a question, it automatically contains the answer. So to really not have the answer to something probably also means you haven't even thought of the question yet.
Therefore, in that case, what are you searching for?
Thank you. More of our relationship to all that is. We will give you, in what you call pragmatic terms, one example we have talked about recently that in your terms represents the idea of not having all the answers and having questions that seem unanswered. I will put it in your terminology. All right? All right. We have talked about, not too long ago, the idea of encountering another civilization, which translates into your language somewhat close to the sound Thuk. The name of the civilization, in other words, is Thuk, although that is a translation into your language and not exactly what they call themselves or what we understand the name to be. Nevertheless, when we encountered this civilization, an amazing paradox and puzzle arise for us. And that is, we can interact with these beings, as you say, face to face, and carry on what might be considered by you to be a relatively normal interaction and conversation. But the moment we turn away from them, we forget who they are, what they look like, and everything that was said. Automatically. Until we turn back and see them again. This is the nature of their existence. They are quasi-dimensional in a sense, but of such a nature that only when engaging them directly are you in their frame of reference, and when you disconnect from it, their frame of reference is so different from ours, there is nothing from their frame of reference we can take with us into ours, and so nothing survives of the conversation. We were extremely excited to encounter these beings, for we had never encountered something like that before. And thus we are still exploring our relationship to them and what attracting them into our reality means about our own existence. So in that sense, yes, you could say there are things we don't know, questions that are unanswered in that context. Does that help?
In a sense, has the human race taught you anything?
Well, besides puns, you mean?
Yes. Have we raised your awareness in any way?
Yes, of course. First of all, understand that even physiologically we owe our existence to you. You are in many ways genetically our ancestors. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Therefore, you have given us life. Great, 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 great grandmother.
What about spiritual awareness?
The idea of spiritual awareness is that every single time you allow yourselves to interact with us and co-create these interactions with us, you open up for us a new understanding and a new perspective of another way that all that is has of expressing itself that we have never encountered before. So any interaction with you is a spiritual revelation to us in terms of a new perspective, a new point of view, a new expression that all that is has, that we can then add to our overall understanding of all that is and our relationship to it and your relationship to it. So interacting with anyone, including humans on Earth, is always an eye-opening and spiritual expansion for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that help? Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And a you good day.
The planet Earth recently, I believe it was March, I may stand corrected on that, we experienced a tremendous, what we term catastrophe, in the form of a tsunami.
Yes.
And from what little reading that I've done on it, it had very far-ranging effects.
Yes.
Much to the liking of the planet has been oscillating for 20-minute cycles.
Yes.
Like a month after the event.
Yes.
And obviously it took a lot of lives.
Yes.
Did a lot of damage.
Yes.
What effects has that produced on our planet on a psychological level, on a spiritual level? What kind of, has it opened gates? What is this event all about?
All right, thank you. As we have discussed many times, the idea is that you will go through the transition on your planet in a number of ways, depending upon the different belief systems and levels of things that people on your planet believe are possible in order to experience such transitions. Many of you may know that transition is inevitable, but may not necessarily know how to experience it other than in a few certain kinds of ways, such as the idea of physical cataclysm and so forth, may be the only way some people have of translating the idea of that magnitude of transition in a way that makes sense to them. In other words, if it doesn't really actually have a physical impact on your planet, they will not necessarily think that things are changing in a powerful way. Also, many people have, in some senses, set up the kind of timing that they have for how long they will be physical on Earth. And they want to create, in certain ways, situations that will act as mechanisms to allow them to transition from physical to non-physical reality. And so they are recognizing that they are still willing to create the idea of certain methodologies that you might call catastrophes to take them out when the timing is right. because they cannot necessarily imagine that they will know consciously how to do that on their own, and so they rely on the automatic mechanisms of the planet to do it for them. You follow me?
Yes, I do.
Now, do also understand that, again, like anything, it can serve double duty. And it depends on the vibration of the person and why they are choosing to attract themselves to that experience in terms of what it is they will get out of it. Because certainly there can be people who are right in the midst of even something that seems to be a catastrophe who will be absolutely unaffected in a negative way. You follow me?
Yes.
Thus, then, what they get out of it will be, of course, what they put into it and the reasons for which they have created their presence in that area, which could be as simple as being around to help. But again, everyone will have their own story as to how they relate to that particular event. However, understand, as we have said, that it does in fact serve double duty in many different ways. And one of the most powerful things it has actually done is that it affected the economy of all of the countries that it hit, but not necessarily in a negative sense. That particular tsunami dredged up from the bottom of the ocean floor vast deposits of titanium and deposited it on the shores of all the countries that it hit. It left so much titanium on the shore that it has actually boosted the economy of every single country it has hit for years to come. Do you understand?
Yeah, that's good.
Therefore, you can always understand that there are many, many, many different kinds of effects that any event creates, and it's really going to be up to the vibration of the people and why they would attract themselves for the reasons of their own personal stories and how they experience that event. Does that make sense?
It does. One of the reasons I asked that question is the fact that with the events like this, as time unfolds,
yes,
it seems as though the response to an event like that is becoming more planetary.
Yes.
As opposed to more of an, oh, it's just an isolated event that
Very
happens
good.
in Africa. That,
Very good.
Okay, we'll let them deal
Yes.
with it. But
You
now
have
the-
squarely illuminated another opportunity because your planet is changing sociologically in many different ways, becoming more global. And one of the most profound things you have seen is an opportunity for a transition of many social institutions and military institutions on your planet, and specifically military institutions, because military institutions were used as rescue efforts and help, and in that sense, relief efforts for those kinds of catastrophes, giving them an understanding that there are other ways in which the military can use what it is they have learned without it being warfare. In the fact, in the future, all of the discipline that has gone into your military will actually shift over to the idea of such rescue events. Do you follow me?
Yeah, very much so.
So yes, you are using these things also to retrain yourselves. Yes.
That's great. And one last quick question.
Yes.
This has been a very awesome weekend.
Awesome.
And-
All right.
And I appreciate your presence here.
Well, I am not there, but thank you for the
Yeah,
sentiment.
right. Do you have any tips as to
Tips?
tips, ideas, suggestions as to how, in this coming week or so, how we can best integrate this material besides leading our normal lives and doing what excites us, how we can best let this sink in?
So besides everything I've already said.
Yeah, besides all that. Exactly, yeah.
I see. All right. One moment. Do you have a favorite location on the planet that you haven't been to in a long time or have never been to but always wanted to go to?
That's funny you asked that because...
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it must be since they're all laughing.
Because...
Why is it funny that I ask that?
Well, because I'm going to be there tonight.
Which would be where?
I'm going to be somewhere in the middle of New Mexico tonight.
I see.
I'm in transition right now, and that's where I projected myself to be.
Yes.
Probably in between whatever the area in between Phoenix and Sedona.
All right.
I'm I guess Phoenix and Sedona, that's a pretty big gap there, but I've always been wildly attracted to New Mexico.
Wildly
Yeah,
attracted.
just something about New Mexico.
To your southwest in general?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Or to your Arizona or New Mexico state, doesn't matter.
New Mexico particularly.
All right. And you're going to Arizona first.
Well, what the transition is, I'm driving from Los Angeles.
Yes.
And my destination for Wednesday is Charlotte, North Carolina, because I'm relocating from California back to the East Coast.
Oh, all right.
So tonight is the first leg of the travel. I'm hoping to get into New Mexico after this event. And New Mexico is a state that there's just something about it.
All right. Something about it. How much time will you spend in that state?
Well, you know, you had mentioned that you were going to be able to visit me in a dream state tonight.
Yes.
And share
Yes.
your excitement. So unfortunately, it's going to be a quick visit because...
Quality, not quantity.
There you go. I really don't have any plans to...
Very good.
...stick around there long.
Don't have any plans. End the sentence there. I really don't have any plans. That is the biggest tip I can give you. Follow your dream. Follow where you are lured to. Be magnetized and attracted to an area on your planet that you feel you are in resonance with, and then don't have any plans. And see what happens. All right?
Sounds good.
That's the biggest tip I can give you. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice trip.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I'd like to ask you, with regard to, well, we've been talking a lot about earth changes and
Yes.
The way that our civilization is eventually going to be changing. And I'd like to know if you can comment about the fate of some of the very large cities in this country, especially Los Angeles.
The fate?
Well, yes. What I have in mind is
Yes.
a couple of things.
You have some fate in mind for them?
No, I don't think it's my idea, but
Really? Are you sure? You're the one saying it.
Well, okay, yes, okay, there is
Are you
something.
catching my drift?
Well, let me just try to clarify this a little bit.
Oh, all right, I'll let you.
The I Am America, I believe it's the I Am America maps,
Yes.
which probably a lot of people are familiar with, show this area eventually, and I'm not sure of the time frame they have in mind, but show this area as a series of islands.
Yes, I
at
know.
some time, you know.
I know what you are referring to.
And
What reality are you going to choose to vibrate to?
well, that's another issue.
No, it's not. That was my earlier point. You bringing this up means you are resonating to an idea here, and I am calling your attention to the fact that you're resonating to an idea here you may actually prefer not to resonate to, so that you don't attract yourself to a reality experience you don't prefer.
Well,
What version of Earth do you wish to resonate to?
all right, well, getting back to actually what is the more important part of this, which it does have to do with my perception.
Yes.
I've had a lot of mystical experiences, you might say, and in one of them, when I'm shown pictures of
Yes.
wonderful pictures of
Yes.
what our civilization can look like,
Yes.
which is really, really beautiful, abundant, balanced, and all of that.
And?
In that picture,
Yes.
when I have kind of asked, well, it's not a picture that includes cities such as ours where there is very little greenery, there is no ability to
Yes.
self-sustain,
Yes,
really,
yes.
and so forth. It's just, they're kind of like either not there, or there seems to be a suggestion that they still do exist, but that there is a different type of society
Yes.
inhabiting those cities where they're still kind of buying into that pattern and not
Yes.
having a very happy time of it.
Yes.
And I've been puzzled about this. Is it that they don't exist anymore, or that we've had this sort of separation where we can be drawn into a reality
Your
that we find?
confusion is because you're actually looking at a transitional reality. In other words, the idea of a reality transitioning from one to another is itself a reality. And you are standing squarely in between two ideas and experiencing that reality of transition itself, and that's where the confusion is coming from. Eventually, we perceive that your reality on Earth will be somewhat closer to our reality on my world, where it is mostly green, and there are not large built-up cities, not because they have been destroyed, but because in that sense they have been deconstructed.
Yes, that's what I would say. That was the suggestion, that they had been deconstructed.
Yes. And this eventually will occur, not in your present lifetime. The idea of the scenario that you are picking up, to get to that point on Earth, you are looking at about 2,000 years down the road.
Wow.
Do you follow?
Yeah, I was hoping it was sooner, but, you know.
The beginnings of it are right now, but the final vision of that idea is about 2,000 of your years down the road. Do you follow that?
Yeah. Thank you, because I have wondered about the time frame of what I was shown.
Yes. Now, the other thing to understand is that about 1,000 years down the road, humans will be making a decision. And that decision will primarily be this, that they will probably not occupy the Earth so much, and certainly will probably not incarnate on it so much anymore. They will allow another race to begin to occupy what is going on the Earth, and let them decide what kind of habitations they require. And that's what you're picking up on, the idea being that the ones that might still be involved in some of the remaining structures may not necessarily be even of your society. They may be on their own path, using Earth for their own lessons and their own experiences, now that humans, in a sense, have moved up a notch. Many humans in spirit will remain connected to the Earth to act as guides for the new civilization that will birth itself upon the Earth for their own experience, the beginning of their own journey. You follow?
Yes, but this very balanced, green, and abundant society where there's communication between species and,
yes.
and all of this, is this...
This will begin shortly.
But is it Earth, or is it another version of Earth?
Well, what's the difference?
Well, in other
You're
words,
in another version of Earth right now. You're 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 in another version of Earth right now.
Okay.
So, of course, it's another version of Earth.
But you threw me a second ago when you mentioned about something, that a decision 1,000 years down the line.
Yes.
Is it the decision to create this very wonderful place, in which, I mean, even the idea of self-sustaining communities now and all of that is the beginning of this creation now that we see
yes.
here. But is it going to be able to flourish?
Yes.
Completely?
Yes.
But then in 1,000 years we're going to be willing to give that up?
Because it will no longer serve you. You will be cleaning the place up for someone else to come in.
Well, the beings that I've seen inhabiting it they look somewhat, well, they look a lot like us, but they're taller, thinner,
yes.
you know.
It's not the same species, exactly, no.
Oh, really?
No. Really. It's not the same species.
So it's not that we have just changed our evolutionary genetic pattern, it's a different species.
Yes.
And some of them are us and others are not, or what?
Well, in a sense, yes, of course, because some of you may decide that incarnationally you wish to partake of their journey, and so you will become them. But some of you will not. Many of you will not. Many of you will move on to other places, other levels, other dimensions.
But will it be, in a sense, a kind of gift to them that
yes.
we are giving them a really wonderful,
yes,
beautiful
yes,
place?
Yes, yes, yes. You're cleaning up your house so the next tenant will have a nice place to move into. But the beginning of this will occur in your lifetime, in the sense that as we read the energy now, somewhere between your year of 2025 and 2033, there will begin open contact between humans on Earth and what you call us, extraterrestrials, and it will be the beginning of a relationship where Earth begins to join in what is called the Interstellar Alliance. And in that sense will also then gain new understanding of its relationship to the Earth, new understanding of its relationship to its cosmic family, new understanding in that sense of all the things it can do to assist other races also coming up the ladder, so to speak, in their evolutionary journey. You will be in that sense taking on new tasks. You will see your position in a new way, taking on new responsibilities you have heretofore not even dreamed of doing. And so by that year, as you call it, 3000, you will be basically getting your house in order to move on to a whole other new level. And therefore, another 1,000 years after that, what you are seeing as the idea of the deconstructed Earth will really be the first 1,000 years of the new society that is going to, in that sense, use Earth as its starting point for another journey. You follow me?
Yes.
Does that help you?
Oh, terrifically. Thank you.
All right.
Could I ask one question, which I wish...
Well,
maybe
that
could
was a
be-
question, so I guess you can.
I'm confused between the Buddhist and the Hindu and the Christian concept of what the soul is.
Yes.
The Hindus believe that as we evolve, we never lose our... that we are all a part of God with its own innate individual
Yes.
existence that we never lose, that we maintain a point of spiritual integrity and individuality
Yes.
throughout our infinite journey.
Yes.
The Buddhists, on the other hand, believe that that individuality and the individual soul is basically an illusion,
Yes.
and that there is no such thing.
Yes.
Is that the drop going into the ocean, does it remain a drop as it participates in the ocean, or does it simply disperse?
Do you remember when we talked about the idea of this and that as opposed to this or that?
Yes.
Then what does that mean?
So it is what the Hindus say is the non-difference difference.
And?
And what?
Not or. And it's also what the Buddhists say, and it's also what the Christians say, and it's also what the Jews say, and it's also what the Muslims say, and it's all true depending upon the level from which you are perceiving it. So they're just perceiving the same thing from different perspectives in different ways and symbolizing them from those perspectives. They're all true from their perspective, and that means they're all true, because everything within God that you can imagine is somewhere real.
Is there anything that's any more real than what's real? Any ultimate reality to this question?
No. The only ultimate reality to that issue is that it's all true. That's the ultimate reality. It's all real. It's all true, and it's all an illusion. But that's what reality is. Understand this. You are not capable of imagining non-existence. Go ahead, give it a shot. Did you do it?
No.
Why not?
Well, as you say, you can't.
Because you can't experience non-existence, can you?
No.
Therefore, anything you actually can imagine exists in some level of existence, is real somewhere, somewhen, somehow within existence. Otherwise, you couldn't imagine it. So that which you can imagine is real. It just depends on